All of us are suffering. Look at you. We tend to have the issue. And we just go to the temple back. Or we should have had our own, which is what you guys are looking for. That's it. Yeah, you know that also goes. That's also
This law, Morris.
Yeah, I think so too. You want to start off, Joe?
Yep.
So I have you guys here. Oh, no, I know. You said you're I'm not even concerned really with that. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I personally think that's probably back then. Oh, no, then he has no intention. Now that could be doing
This law, Morris. That's right. Let's rise and get started off.
I think that would make sense, right? Because if we choose behind, it's just September right now. Basically, just.
Father on the left, two on the right. Allah, the Father of the universe.
Allah, Father of the universe.
Father of love.
Father of love.
Truth. Peace. Freedom. And justice. Allah is my protector. My guide. And my salvation. By night. And by day. He was holy prophet. Noble Ali. Islam. To be proclaimed in every meeting. I hereby inform all members I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical agitating speeches while at work, in their homes, or on the streets. We are for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans, it causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be of severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings toward the temple or the prophet, or to violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement, will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the law as laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, they should turn in their carding button, cease wearing their turban and fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. This is a holy and divine movement founded by Prophet Noble Ali. And if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet, therefore, is sending out a divine plea to all Moorish Americans that they do their part in protecting their prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. Noble Ali. Islam. Islam. I am glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There is a host of jealousy about me and the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claim I was only a joke and real. But now, since they have found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens, they are working every scheme that they can to disqualify me, so they may take charge of the situation. I have notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that attribute to the movement and uplifting funds. The ones that paid their divine respect to me and the movement will be remembered. That is why I am calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance and I need it badly. Never before have I needed finance so badly as I do at present, so I can shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without I, the prophet, being head. It has been proven by my works which I have performed in the past few years. Prophet Noble Ali. To the members of the Moor Science Temple of America. Islam. This is the instruction from your Prophet Noble Ali. Be faithful unto your forefathers' divine and national creed, that you will be blessed for your good deeds that you sow in the flesh. Allah is the one that judges the world, and his judgment is now on, but the weak can comprehend it not. The end of time is drawing near, so says Allah to his divine prophet, I Noble Ali. And that is why many hearts have been turned to stone. Many have eyes to see, but cannot see, ears to hear, but cannot hear, lest they will be confounded of their sins. These are trying hours now, dear Moors, and every evil spirit is moving, and they are trying every weak mind to overthrow and drag out the true foundation that has been laid, and to cause confusion in the minds of the ones that do believe. But if you have the true love of Allah and the spirit of your forefathers, you fear not what you hear or see, but will sacrifice the utmost of your very life to protect your movement and your prophet. Watch your enemies, dear Moors. Your enemies are the ones that speak against your prophet and ridicule him to the very lowest, and the ones that speak against your divine and national principles of your temples. Act accordingly, and Allah would bless you for your good work. Peace, your divine prophet, Noble Ali. Islam. Jeanette Watson Hamilton had a had a 10, 12 page dissertation on what we spoke about last week with the organized pseudo-legal commercial argument that they try to put on Moors. The acronym is OPCA. So you might hear this come up in your activity. You would hear them make relation to a case called Needs versus Needs, and call the arguments that you're making as a Moor call the arguments that you're making as a more vexatious arguments. Now what, as we're going through this, Moors, feel free to, put out your thoughts or whatever that comes up. As well, you people, if you have any questions, feel free to just ask any questions that you have. So the PDF version of this is called the Organized Pseudo-Legal Commercial Argument Litigant Case. The Organized Pseudo-Legal Commercial Argument Litigant Case. This decision by Associate Chief Justice John D. Rook was the subject of much media attention when it was released. So this is 2012. The attention was well deserved. The lengthy and well-researched decision fills a gap in the jurisprudence and scholarship on vexatious litigants by shining a spotlight on and systematically examining a category of litigants for whom Justice Rook coined the collective term organized pseudo-legal commercial argument. Right, so the powers that he's using to help this slander campaign is under a Chief Justice. These litigants are distinguishable from the more usual types of vexatious litigants because they use a collection of techniques and arguments sold by people Justice Rook called rules. His decision is valuable for several reasons. It collects all of the reported Canadian decisions dealing with OPCA litigants. It describes the indica by which OPCA litigants can be recognized. It describes the concepts they have relied upon and the arguments they have made and why those arguments have all failed in every Canadian court. And it discusses what judges, lawyers, and litigants can do when faced with OPCA. So this whole idea was created in 2012. We've been around since 2008. And with them presenting this in 2012, we know that it's based on activity that Moors were taking with standing up for certain rights. And the fact that once we start standing up for certain rights, that's a threat to their whole system. Because their whole system is based on you going into these places called courts and them raping you when you go in there by getting you to either put finance or a lawyer / attorney, lawyer, attorney, court fees, fines, and anything else that they can come up with to try to get some finance out of you, whatever it is. In this post, I will summarize Justice Rook's 736 paragraph, 156 page decision, plus 2 appendices. Hopefully the summary will be useful to those who do not want to read the entire decision. Those already familiar with the contents of the decision or interested only in commentary should skip past the summary, blah, blah. I have not attempted to comment on each aspect of the lengthy decision, but instead chosen to focus on 3 issues. 1, first, the lack of research into the scholarship on the OPCA phenomenon seems to be a real problem. Why is a superior court judgment the first systematic treatment of the subject, the first to describe the present state of the law. 2, it appears that family law is one of the contexts in which OPCA litigants can frequently, perhaps even disproportionately, be found. Even if their presence there is not disproportionate, are there factors in the family law context that suggest different responses are needed? 3, Justice Rook indicates that OPCA litigants are very different from ordinary vexatious litigants. However, I wonder just how different some of them are. To what extent are some OPCA litigants, perhaps not those who have found their way into reported cases, merely desperate litigants who have conducted internet researches looking for information helpful to their cases and who have seized on this OPCA material? So one of the things that we employ to Moors is to make sure that they go get their study materials. Make sure you have your dictionaries, make sure you have the different, whether it's law dictionary, metaphysical dictionary, medical dictionary, whatever dictionary, making sure that you're not limiting your studies to just punch it up in Google and whatever comes up, click that, and then that's what it is. That you fact check and then fact check and then fact check and fact check so that you can have a broader perspective of what other people are presenting to us. Example with this, where there's been a number of Moors who have had situations, and the first thing that they want to do is point at a Moor and say, oh yeah, you're a sovereign citizen. And then use that as the basis of how we're going to deal with these people that start talking against, what it is that the so-called courts are doing. Summary of the decision. These matters came before Justice Rook on an application by the wife's lawyer for the appointment of a case management judge in a divorce and matrimonial property action commenced by Mrs. Meads. After a hearing on June 8th, Justice Rook granted that application and appointed himself as the case management justice. Right, so already you know that it's an issue. If the judge is saying, I'm going to be the one to sit and hear this, which lets you know that he already had ulterior motives, or he was already somebody who was put in that place to make this so-called decision and then use it in 2012, that it was supposed to be something that was with Europeans or whatever. Now they got Moors in there. His written reasons were motivated by the materials filed or submitted by Mr. Meads, his arguments during and after the hearing, his conduct in court, and his litigation strategies based on hearing and materials. Justice Rook determined that Mr. Meads was an OPCA litigant. Now, in those jurisdictions, the first issue, somebody got status in the law dictionary. The first issue in any type of controversy, the first issue in any type of communication is status. Whether you're in court, whether you're out on the street, you see something, first thing is, hi, how you doing? My name is. That's status. And then they tell you, oh, my name is, and then that's them putting their status. So that's the same thing that when you go into these places, tribunals, or administrative buildings, that this is the first thing. They go on their list, they call whoever up, whoever goes up. What's your name? My name is you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and help me God, and then they start talking about cases when nobody else in the room ever said their name and who they are, which is a conflict of interest. So they're going to say, well, the fact that Moore went in there and then he didn't want to take his hat off and he didn't want, he's OPCA litigant. The fact that he's asking me for a delegation of authority, and why is he asking me for documents and up, you're the OPCA litigant. When the law is that status has to be established before anything could happen, whether it's in court or whether it's in society. First thing they want to know, who are you? And I let you know who I am. Then after that, we can start having some conversations about something. Until this happens, there should be no conversations happening about anything. Of course, in the tribunal administrative courts, they have their security guy who's gonna, like we've had Moors who went to these tribunals, and when it's time for them to deal with the status, say their name and stuff like that, bailiff is right there. They got the cuffs, and he has the cuffs, clink, 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 just playing with the cuffs in order to throw off the attention. If anybody's been in those institutions, whether it's -40 outside or whether it's whatever, it's always cold in those buildings because they already have, they already know people that are coming in aren't looking at it from the perspective of these people are only administrative. All they're about is getting some type of finance. They're not dealing with law. They don't care about law. Law does not apply. Only thing that applies with them is legalese. That's all they go by. So again, if you start talking about law, instead of legalese, they're going to tell you OP and try to put you under this jurisdiction. And then again, remember, because the first issue is status, if you don't put a status up, they're going to assume a status. And the status that they're going to assume with Moors is that we're this. Right?
And that jumps to subject matter jurisdiction. So
right.
It drops down from status all the way down to subject matter because that's commercial agreements.
So first issue is status. Second issue is jurisdiction, which is broken down into subject matter, personam, and territory. So let's just say they skip past this. Then their next thing is jurisdiction. Our thing is supposed to be, what jurisdiction are you claiming? Are you claiming subject matter jurisdiction, which means what we're in here talking about? Are you claiming personam jurisdiction, which means over the individual who's in there talking about the subject matter? Or are they claiming territorial jurisdiction, which means where this so-called court is? Where is this place that you're taking me? Is this part of Moroccan Empire, or is this your little own private jurisdiction that you pulled me in to try to adjudicate matters? That you really shouldn't be doing like that, because again, if the first issue is status and you're telling me, yeah, well, I'm Chief Justice, whatever, that doesn't tell me anything. Show me that in documented form that you're Chief Justice, whatever. Don't say that out your mouth that you're that. Any questions, comments?
They do that to me in the field on the road. OPCA, oh, you're a free man on the land? You're with a free man on the land?
Right.
And I said, no, I'm not a free man on the land. I'm not sovereign citizen. That's oxymoron, and I'm not a moron. So I go down with my nationality.
Right. Okay. And then also too, when they realize that you got them here, then like what they did with you, then they go after your property and start claiming that they have jurisdiction over that.
Because of registers.
Because of it was registered, or it has a plate, or it has something that ties them, or they have something that ties you to them that it's not really open that that's what that is. It's a secret code with them when they start talking about registered. Is it whatever registered? Is this registered? Are you registered? You have a birth certificate, which is registration. You have a license, which is registration. Do you have, SIN number, which is registered? You got any kind of card in your pocket with a name that says a name that we can deal with? Because if you're saying that you're a Moor, automatically they're supposed to not deal with you. Automatically they're supposed to say, oh, sorry about that. Didn't know that you were outside of the jurisdiction. So, but because of Novatwali coming in 1913, but it's 2019 that we're hearing about this. They've had ample amounts of years to master their craft. They've had ample amount of years to put things in place so that, because they already know that the ancients are going to return. So they put everything in place so that if the ancients do return, they have certain things in place, and then again, they have their justice or whatever, different individuals who are working on their side to make sure that we don't get to that stage where everything gets dismissed every time with them, regardless of what it is. Because the first issue has to be established before they can start doing anything. Has to be. The only reason that it's not is because it's one more that's in there standing up on this, and then 500 Negroes in there just going and saying their name, and they just go through the whatever. And then once they got 50 people against one, then we'll run these people through all day, and then we'll call them more up at 3:30. Court's done at 3:31. We'll bring him in. Oh, sorry, lunch, and then they go and tell you to come back whenever they get some time to prepare themselves for the next time that you go back. Then they do the thing again, run through everybody, and then wait till 3:30, bring you up. Oh, sorry, we didn't get through the thing. Could you come back or whatever? And then Moore's got hit to the game that they start saying, yeah, I'll come back a year from now instead of tomorrow. I'll come back in 6 months instead of tomorrow or whatever day that you people are trying to bring me back here, because I already know what your game is.
And to add on to that whole thing with what time they bring you in and what day they bring you in, they also know to work off your zodiac.
Right.
And, it needs to draw your energy, So you gotta watch that too, right? So you don't let them pick the things, you pick the things, right?
In relation to them knowing about your zodiac and them trying to plan and push everything off, how does fee schedule affect them in that manner? Like
the issue with fee schedule is that a fee is feudal.
Mm-hmm.
So they're really supposed to be charged. Really. They're really just supposed to get a bill for whatever the charge is. Are they going to pay it? Probably not, because we're asking for gold and silver as payment, and they know they don't have that, right? But with actually,
even writing in lieu of the juror money, the fiat.
that's something that you can put. Okay, so for example, right here, Judge Rook offers the following catalog of OPCA indicia, complete with cases that discuss them as elements that suggest a closer review and specific court procedures may be warranted. He adds that a typical OPCA litigant submission will incorporate many of these. And what they have here is documents presented without prior service or warning, such as documents that made the court a fiduciary, agent, or impose a contract on the judge or court official, or a fee schedule. So as soon as we say fee schedule, that's where they're going, because that's one of the things for them to look for in order to be able to claim that OPCA jurisdiction. So opposed to saying fee schedule, you can say something else, whatever it is, but don't say fee schedule, right? You know, charge them, you know, bill them, but automatically know that certain language that we've been accustomed to using, they're targeting.
The triggers at the center.
They're using that to set up the jurisdiction for them to be able to do whatever it is under the guise that, oh, see there,
Assumptions.
he said whatever, so that means he's not really, but all right, fine. Since you're gonna say, we're gonna say charge them. We're gonna charge you, you know, $8 an hour times how much ever hours you have me in there. Opposed to you got a fee, I'm gonna give you a fee schedule and you gotta pay or whatever. Right?
So then, in regards of making that special appearance, how can we put them in a position?
Yo, please,
How can we put them in a position to be forced to recognize or honor your arrival, so as to say this is the time from this time, whereas they say, oh, we didn't see you until this time, we didn't see you until 3:30, and then we had lunch a minute after, so there was no hour.
Well, one aspect of it is, like we were talking about, making sure that we're walking straight and narrow, so we don't even see those people. Whether we're doing some type of metaphysical work, whether we got, you know what I mean, like, you know, don't go nowhere without the crystal bag.
Yeah.
Just because we know that is energy. You know what I mean? Certain things we just have to do. You know what I mean? Before you get in the conveyance, say the prayer, or you do some type of meditation before you get, because as a man thinketh, so he is. So if your mind is on them, you're probably gonna see them. More 99% of the time, they say, man, I hope they don't, as soon as you look in the rearview, here they come, they're making a turn or whatever. Like they're listening to you think or whatever like that. You know what I mean? So, right. But beyond that, if situation happens where it goes on, we don't deal with, we take the approach, or we take the lessons from the black guys who got stopped, got choked out, and got shot up and whatever like that. And we don't talk with these people on the street corner, right? Just give me the ticket. We'll deal with this whenever we see you, and then that's where you come with the special appearance, sending in some type of paperwork to them, so that they can expect you being in there. Whether they read it or not is irrelevant. The point is that you put them on notice, because they're going to do whatever they're going to do regardless, right? Again, because we're looking at, we're not talking about courts or jurisprudence or law or whatever. We're talking about legalese. We're talking about colonists. We're talking about inquisitors. We're talking about, you know, when they bring you to court, that's the same thing they did in the Inquisition.
That's all I've noticed in maritime law.
All they're doing is exercising their colonial powers, because they really shouldn't be dealing with it like that. Having the building, you go in the building, and then they got the guy up there. Then you had to get a lawyer who works for them, which means that they obviously not working for you, and you pay them, and then the court wants you to pay fees or whatever, because all that is part of their money grab. You know, all that's part of their game that they play. And again, you know what I mean? We're 100 years behind the 8 ball. So certain things, you know, like we used to talk about 2007, 2008, when we came into this, and Moor say to go to court shut down. Nobody has court that day. There's Brother Misery was talking about them giving him a court date on Christmas. That's the day you're gonna come to court. Moor, you wanna go to court? Okay, we're gonna go to court on Christmas Day.
And go ahead and not here.
Like, they don't, Because they're getting that's their cop out. You know what I mean? Okay, fine. You know the law and all that stuff. Okay, we'll see you on Christmas.
And if I'm there, we'll do double turn.
And if I'm there, because I definitely know those guys aren't going to be there on Christmas. They're definitely not going to be there, right?
So the next question is, when entering this venue, is it really that important to stay behind the bar, whereas they want you to come past the bar to speak into the microphone?
I mean, I look at the building as the bar.
Mhm.
When you're in the building, you cross the bar.
Yeah.
When they start talking about the bar or not, it's going into all these OPCA stuff because that's what they're going to be looking. They're going to look for. Okay, let's see if he's talking from behind the bar, or yeah, he's the OPCA or whatever like that. Because you're already in the jurisdiction, you're in the building.
Mhm.
But all right, fine. You know, yeah, you can stay behind the bar, no problem. You know what I mean? They already got OPCA. We're not even going anywhere with this guy. But hey, do your behind the bar thing if you think that's where you think that's the bank and then the maritime and dock the ship and all that type of stuff. All that is sovereign citizen European talk. That really has nothing to do with us on that level. Because if we're really talking about the bar and the whatever like that, we should be crossing that stuff, get this guy out the seat and sit in the judge seat and adjudicate our stuff.
Yeah.
We're talking about, right? Hold on.
I was just gonna say, when you were communicating before, that it's the actual, what we talked about years ago was that your paperwork should precede you, and everything should be null and void at that point. Even stepping into the actual building is jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Giving them jurisdiction.
Yeah.
That's the issue. That's why you're talking about walking straight. It's not about you getting caught up in that. Once you're even having a discussion with them, you're in their jurisdiction.
You're in there. Right, and then think about it on this level too. That you know, because our incompetence of certain facts creates a catch-22 in certain situations. So, for example, with Moors will be saying, for example, well, I want this dismissed or whatever. This should be dismissed. Well, they need jurisdiction to do that. But you're claiming they don't have jurisdiction. So how are they supposed to dismiss if they don't have jurisdiction? You know what I mean? So there has to be they're gonna get somewhere or the other in order for you to get whatever you want, or for them to get whatever it is that they're supposed to get. There's gonna be some level of jurisdiction that they're gonna violate in order to get there, right? And again, like Brother Omar said, you know, things like your paperwork preceding you is not something that all Moors do. You know, some Moors have the mentality that energy is my paperwork. I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna say whatever I say, and then you guys do whatever you're gonna do, like, because I can't do nothing anyways.
I'm one of those.
Right? Yeah. Right.
You
know?
Going back to what you were saying, where you're just walking through a building in this jurisdiction, is this building in Washington, D.C. at all?
Right, or let's just say for here.
Oh, for here?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're doing business on our land.
Right.
Okay, so they have to have some sort of authority to do that.
Right? There has to be some type of delegated authority for them to say, we're a court, I'm a judge, as a lawyer, this is a bailiff, whatever. Whether if we use the jurisdiction of Washington or we use the jurisdiction of Canada. Where did the authority come from? Because remember, they're not looking at it like, you know, Canada's part of the U.S. They're in Canada's its own entity or whatever. So even pulling them in on that level is gonna have them have to admit to some type of level of authority. Where are you getting it from? You don't care what it is, but where do you get that authority from to say that you can do what you're doing right? If they're gonna say, well, the Queen and I took an oath and all that stuff, you already know that you're playing games, because then she does not hold jurisdiction here like that. She's just on the money. That's it. Not on the fiat. Yeah. You had status there, Mama?
Status? Well, I have two different. You want the status?
Yeah, you can start with status.
Okay, status. Standing state or condition, oh, it's a noun. Standing state or condition. That is the legal relation of an individual to the rest of the community. The rights, duties, capacities, and incapacities which determine a person to a given class. A legal personal relationship, not temporary in its nature, nor terminable at the mere will of the parties with which third persons and the state are concerned. It also means estate, because it signifies the condition or circumstances in which one stands with regard to his property.
So status, the importance of us letting them know our position is to let them know that we're not some temporary fixture. This is permanent. And that we have a tie to an estate based on us even making this statement of we have a status. Or, we would say in propria persona. Any questions, comments?
I like the fact that it says non-temporary because it also, like, on the term of status, there's civil or more tus, that's also not temporary. And there's also in propria persona, in full life, different degrees of status in society, right? Whether it's branded or nationalized.
Yeah. So on the issue of status, you saying nothing, they're going here, that you're civilly dead. Right? By you not making a statement, by you allowing them to do whatever, they're saying, they're gonna assume, oh, he's probably civilly dead or whatever, so, we can waive everything. And we can do whatever we want. We could run our full racket if you don't say anything. Whereas racket stops when you start talking about your status is in propria persona or in full life. Which means that you're not this. And if you're not this, then that means they don't have jurisdiction. Because civil mortus, they would say that that's a war.
Or checking property.
Right?
Stocks if you want to do.
And again, with regard to status, it speaks about the relation that you have with your property. So if you have no status, you can't have property. So if you go into the tribunal for some driving matter, by you not having a status, and they put you in civil mortus, then the property that you think is yours is really theirs. Because the status is supposed to be reflective of the property. So if the status of the individual, if the status of the person is natural person, then that should apply to all that individual's property as well. That doesn't just apply to because I said it, that means, right? For example, like when they say when Moors go to court, take off your hat and all that stuff. This is relative to status, which means that this is property that applies to the being. This isn't separate from the being, and then I'm a Moor over here, and then the fez is over there, but the fez has nothing to do with me because I'm not wearing it or whatever, right? They're not gonna say, take your shirt off when you go to court. That's your property. They're not saying, take your pants off, take your shoes off. Just give you one sock and we'll keep one or whatever. But why do they play that with this?
They know.
because they already know that you having this in there makes the judge be civilly remorse now. Right? Brother Renner.
No, I was just saying it was just saying in relation to status, how you're saying to the state. I was just reading a part in there, so it only signifies that stuff with it says because it only signifies conditional circumstances in which one stands with regard to this property. Like so like in the sense Moorish American, you know, Americans, you know what I'm saying? Like now there's copper colored tone people trying to conquered by the European.
Yeah.
So the status would be that for us, copper colored tone Moorish American, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is in regards to the estate, the property standing on right here, right? Our property, right? So that's what it just stuck with me right there. And I don't know how you're just talking about that. Well, estate thing.
And on that note too, like if you look up the word unity in the Black dictionary, the first word you'll see is the state. Right? Like in the matters of the state law. How many people out there are talking about this unified that don't even mention what unity is?
Right.
In the matters of the state.
Yeah.
They'll play emotions with their crowd boy, fear and guilt, so they can use emotion. They won't teach them what they're actually doing.
Right. And like we were talking about with the last night's session, that's the same thing with liberation. Liberation has to do with dissolving a contract. And you don't hear any of these people that say liberate their people or whatever talk about dissolving any type of contracts that they have. Contracts don't even come up, but they're liberating their people though. Right? They're helping keep them liberated, but they're not talking about dissolving the contracts, which puts them in the status of being property and not being free beings.
Sounds like reparation of the status quo.
Yeah.
To maintain colonization.
The OPCA phenomenon, its members, organization, and history, Justice Rook begins by noting that members of the OPCA community are surprisingly unified by their methodology and objectives, albeit otherwise diverse from all occupations and from across the political spectrum. Members have highly conspiratorial perspectives, although they differ about who is a part of such conspiracies. They also believe that ordinary people have been unfairly cheated of or deceived about their rights. Justice Rook identifies this belief that the ordinary people have been abused and cheated by some conspiracy as the basis of OPCA members' perceived right to break the system and retaliate against their oppressors, quote unquote. So part of our duty is uplifting the fallen. So as soon as we start putting out, again, we're going 2008 to 2012. Before they even started classifying sovereign citizens and whatever, it was a common theme that when Moors go to court, they're going to court or tribunal or whatever like that in order to help the people there who don't know about this. We're not even going there for our own self to get off of our thing. The whole purpose of us going in there is so that our people are able to, one, see us, engage us or whatever, and get this different perspective. So there was times where we went to the tribunal and we would have people, and again, this is like, 09, 010 or whatever. We go to the tribunal and then we would have individuals in there come up to us, like, what? How come they sat you down? How come they said you go sit down and we'll deal with you later? Why aren't they dealing with you now like they're dealing with everybody else? And we have to explain to them, they're waiting to save us for last or whatever because they don't want anybody in here to know what's going on, right?
They're going there to demonstrate, to enlighten, and elevate.
right? Which is what they don't want, because again, their whole status quo is civilly dead people. That's the only people they can rape. People who don't know about their rights.
They want to keep the dead, not knowing about the living.
And then again, too, on the other side of that, this is why the Morehouse law people that used to be with us, this is why they go to that place, because they're trying to get civilly dead people, because they know that those are the only people that's going to pay $5,000 for some paper. Only somebody with their back against the wall in a desperate situation is going to say, I'll give you guys $2,000 for some papers in order to get off of my whatever situation that they're dealing with, right? Which is where the judge is going. That's what he's talking about the people who are coming in here and they're talking about all this other stuff, get people in trouble because they think that something's going on in this jurisdiction. Because remember, we don't have an issue with those people doing what they do as far as their, racket. Just don't pull your racket stuff on me, because I'm a Moor. I'm a different status. You can do whatever you want with anybody else who doesn't want to know the law, who thinks that all this has to do is Islam and, you know what I mean, we're a religious cult and all that stuff. You rape them. When we go up in here, you recognize what's up. They should be doing that with anybody who comes in here that looks like us. But we already know that they have their status quo. No different than, you already know, from the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, 31st, until the 10th of the next month, be very weary, because that's status quo time. They're going to have all their little guys out there with their little guns down the bushes and stuff like that, waiting for people and all that, because they know end of the month is status time. We're getting people between those times. Anytime else is free reign, doesn't matter. Just go check police stuff. They'll tell you that end of the month, beginning of the month, that's when we rape people. That's where we're actually looking for you, because they have their numbers that they got to get, right? And track, which again, you're not going to argue it, because that's part of their thing. It's just like notice, like we say with the construction. They give you months notice. Don't drive around this street or whatever. There's going to be a crater in this street on this day to this day to this time. People still go in there, messing their car back and forth on this messed up street. They got 5,000 other streets they can take. But they're not going to do that. They're going to take this street right here with this big pothole right here, with the big arrow pointing that pothole right here. Don't drive here. Well, it doesn't matter. People go and then they're mad. It doesn't matter when you put yourself in the jurisdiction. Right? It's all about not putting yourself there. How about it's like the Taj Tree made a example with they got the pool with the doodoo in there. And everybody's getting their doodoo suit, and then they're zipping up to their neck. They got the goggles and stuff like that, so they can be in the doodoo and swim in the doodoo and all that stuff. How about not go in the doodoo pool? Forget the suit to go in the doodoo pool. Just not go in there at all. Right? Just not go in there. Save yourself the headache. OPCA litigation is apparently a money-making proposition, as explained by Justice Moor. The community of individuals he labeled gurus promote and sell a commercial product in seminars, books, websites, instructional DVDs, and other recordings. Now, as soon as you talk about gurus promoting, selling commercial products and all that stuff, obviously they're not dealing with birthrights, nationality, or anything like that. The nationality can't be sold, cannot be bought. Somebody can't give you a bill because you want to know about your birthrights. And then we have to know that as soon as somebody does that, that they're playing. Regardless of what it is. If we have holy covenant that, look after our brother and sister if they're in adversity or whatever like that. Ain't nobody out there should be telling anybody 500 consultation fee to talk with a Moor because I got a situation, and so, to get out of the situation, give me 500 and I'll give you the whatever it is that you need to. That's not what this is supposed to be. It became that later because people realized that you can make finance out dumb people. And that there's many people out there who are incompetent, that they're really lazy asses. They don't want to do stuff for themselves or whatever. And then the individual is going to have the mindset, well, a servant is worthy of his hire. So, my time is worth 50 an hour. Yeah, but that's supposed to be your brother. That's about to, get jail time or whatever. And then you're going to hit him up. And then when you hit him up, then he's not going to get off the stuff or whatever. And then because he doesn't get off, you're not going to give him back the finance or whatever. Right? As Justice Rook stresses repeatedly, the audience for this commercial activity is the client, the potential OPCA litigant who will be paying for and using the product. Why would people pay for this product? Because remember, he's coming from justice position, so they know certain things. Why would people pay for this? Right? But remember, they're not going to tell people go study or whatever. They're go hire a lawyer, which is the same stuff that you're paying for that you shouldn't be paying for, but through the lawyer. But because the lawyer works for those guys, well, it's all right. They can say fees and all that stuff, 5,000 retainer for nothing. Because guarantee, any type of paperwork lawyers doing for whoever, regardless of whatever situation, that individual can walk down to the court themselves. Matter of fact, they don't walk down to the court anymore. They can go online, print that stuff by themselves. They can print the papers that they need for court themselves, that the lawyer's going to print, and then they can submit it themselves. Yeah, Mark.
What's the difference between a lawyer and a guru?
Yeah. maybe more than that. Right? In this instance, there's no difference. There's no difference in this. Right? This is why with the Red Book and the priesthood is dead and us not, playing that thing of the titles, whatever. Right? Yeah, we get it, but you don't need grand sheet to witness when you got all these Moors around here that could witness your stuff. Like it's not that serious like that. As far as the guru, the guy at the front is the whatever. Like we know Moors that have wealth of information and they don't have any time. They're not teaching any classes. They're not doing anything. And they got info that some of these grand whoever's don't even have. Right? Because the whole thing of again, them doing this thing of gurus and whatever is to put it out as if these people are claiming to be credible, but they're not really credible, and guru is some fake whatever. But that's only with this. When they start talking about Swami or whoever else that's guru, they're not calling them OPC or whatever. The Sikh who's coming in there and he's the head of or whatever, and they're standing up for, they're not calling him guru. They're gonna call him Sikh. They're gonna call them by their nationality or whatever.
That's because they're not national these guys, they're foreign nationals. It's because they're foreign nationals, so they don't have the same amount of jurisdiction as the more.
Yeah, you could look at it from that perspective, but also too that anybody who is not Aboriginal Indigenous that comes here, remember they're getting something from Canada to be a dual citizen. Like they're not saying they're dual because I'm Sikh and then I have allegiance to the Indigenous people. They're saying I'm Sikh and I'm a Canadian, whatever, right? And then like we were talking about earlier, they have their little individual that they groom or whatever like that, then get him in the seat now he's their representative and he'll talk for them and get them whatever it is that they want. under the guise of, you know, this is how it's supposed to be because, you know, we're not from here.
Mhm.
If you're not from here, how come you have a guy that's in, how is somebody not from here? How is a foreigner being part of a foreign thing that when they were British Indian company, they didn't want nothing to do with Europeans. They were saying that they're down with that.
Mhm.
When they started saying, oh yeah, we're not going to say Ceylon anymore. We're going to say Sri Lanka and all that stuff. And Europeans came there and tried to take over. They weren't down with it then.
That's like Americans going to Hindustan and supporting the British, or going to Ceylon and supporting the Portuguese.
Right. But then now, because they can get a little whatever that they can get, you know what I mean? Like I was talking with somebody and they were saying, how come we don't just do like the Sikhs did in, how come we didn't do like the Sikhs did in Brampton and now we can own Brampton or whatever?
Mhm.
Well, because you're not dealing with national principles. You want to say African, Negro, slave, and talk about stuff that has nothing to do with who you are. But again, they're able to do that because once they get here, they invoke their national whatever, even if they're on the corporate side. And again, because them agreeing the corporate thing is how they're able to get away with doing certain things because they have their agreements.
So then, quick question back to the gurus and the lawyers. What's the difference between an attorney and a lawyer? Is that an attorney represents you outside?
Anybody got you got yours there already?
Yeah, what's the
Lawyer and attorney. But we got two, right? Just so.
you're closer to a so
Like bottom line, all of them are officers of the court. From, you know, our perspective. Either or. Whether it's court appointed, which is duty counsel, right? Whether it's that, whether attorney, whether somebody defending somebody else, you know, the judge, bailiff, what all these people work on their side. And their job is to make sure that the legalese idea is pushed and that the jurisprudence is not really out there like that, but you know, they know that they have obligation to the scales. They know they have obligation to my eye. Because all those guys are masons or whatever, so they already know what's up. They know the scales and weighing the heart and the feather and all that stuff. They already know what's going on. Even though with them, the heart weighs more than the feather, but that's their jurisdiction. So you know, they got sister with the blindfold on and say that that's law. Scales are like this or whatever with the blindfold, letting people know this is not real. It's not balanced. You know what I mean? This stuff is way off. What?
Well, a couple of things. One, I think the aspect of her being blindfolded is that she's not putting any influence on it. I think that's where I see the blindfold to that.
It's just resting on her, just carrying.
You know, what they're trying to say is that she's really just that point, right? She's not influencing anything. First thing. Secondly, the whole aspect of the Sikhs and Brampton and all that stuff with the legal stuff. To me, this is where Cujo and I have been on the point that all of their power comes from their commitment to their group. The reason why they own Brampton is because they all moved to Brampton.
Right.
It didn't matter what was going on there. They all moved there. Once that happened in metaphysical form, that's what created the energy. Same thing with Chinatown. Same thing with the little area here. But you can see how dilapidated this area is, right? We really need to start exercising that. Once we exercise that, the power comes from that, right? It's not the other way around. And the last thing is the aspect of them as foreigners. About 2-3 years ago, when I opened up a straw bank account, it was very interesting. I was looking over the records, and on one of the entries, it said foreign investment. and this is maybe going back 5 years now, I didn't understand what it meant. And as I was doing the study, what the whole precedent or what the whole thing has been predicated on is that they're all foreigners here. They're foreigners as well. European is foreigner as well. But he's taking the position of being the master because we're not taking that position. So all of those entries, and that's why we're all being taxed and all that stuff, because we are foreigners to this land. Right? So the Sikh and all those guys, they're all foreigners as well, but they just signed off on the fraud. Right? So all of us, when we look at your bank accounts, they're all foreign investments. Even us as straws, we are foreigners here. When you go and put in your names, they're all in caps. We're foreign entities. That's why they're doing all this stuff to us. We haven't been able to supersede that jurisdiction because of where we are as a people, right? Because we haven't initiated and activated the power of being Aboriginal Indigenous. And what they've done is they've superseded that, the so-called Aboriginal Indigenous, we were talking about this earlier today, through the whole First Nations Indian sort of act. So they've got their fingers in all of this. And what we have to understand that it's really about us activating, first of all, just our metaphysical energy of coming together, and we're all going to agree we're going to buy this place. And once we do that, and then we get into an area, like Cooper says, we then put one of our boys up there. And once that happens, then we're in the game. The game is still the corporate game, right? That's what's all been signed off. Right? So I just wanted to sort of let us know that it's not something that is being done outside. It's really inside that it's being done. They're all agreeing that when they come in there, they already know where they're going. They're going to Brampton. And that's why then they have their Bangladesh. So that's the stuff, the next level stuff that I think we have to get to, because we keep looking for some kind of we keep looking for some kind of like what am I trying to say? Some kind of affidavit or something that's going to activate it. We're in trouble if we're looking for an affidavit because they've co-opted all of that. The whole lawyer, attorney, all of that stuff. They're all foreigners. It really is about us coming together as a people. And then everything else comes from that. So that's where I think we're sort of putting the cart ahead of the horse.
In regards to the bank, in regards to the straw being foreign and everything, I went to a bank and I spoke with an Hindustani national there. He was saying that he was familiar with individuals coming in and setting up an account with the nationality card. And so I was just curious, set up before a national user a nationality card to set up an account, what would the book say in regards to a national of these lands using that to open an account?
Yeah, but remember, it's just
I can answer that too, because I work at it, right? And so, like even for me, when I started waking up with my national card, I rescinded all my identifications and I used my national ID. And so now, like, if I were to sit with somebody, I put that as national identification. It'd be under like the other tab, and then within there you get to subcategorize what's the other, and then one of them, ironically, is national ID. It's not federal government ID, right? So they do recognize it. It's just not. Maybe they have it that they experience.
But I would also add an addendum to that, saying that it's just like walking into that building. If you go into the bank, their bank, and somewhere there's probably going to be some subsection, some administrative thing in there that really still has them running the show, right? Because they would then be a foreign bank doing business here. So you as a national, technically, they would then be looking to talk to you about stuff because you're the one running the show, right? So that can't happen. So the instant you go in there, it's like what you've done. It's like incorporating your free national name.
Yeah.
That's what it really would be like.
It's still a foreign investment because they're acting as future.
Well, yeah, and from the extent that you're taking the one thing that supersedes everything, and then you're sort of, it's like you're taking off your jacket and throwing it in the mud. Yeah, you're submitting yourself to that.
But you know, there's ways to defend yourself from that too.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's not just like you're using them. They're just a business, just as much as Canada is a business, or Federal Express is a business, right? So if you're a national and you're reserving all your rights instead of putting in your regular signature, anytime there is conflict, you're protected. Because who has a claim on a stack of paper registered somewhere? That people are given power to say, like CIBC or TD. That's not
The living
part of the entity.
Well,
It's an official entity.
but I would also then say that, and I'm sure Cujo and a number of us, even Amari back in the day, try reserving your rights on one of their documents. They're not gonna accept that document. That's what happens, they don't accept it. You say, I'm reserving my rights to you guys committing fraud, they just tell you we're not taking your, remember Amari?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Like to try and do that with his mortgage stuff. You put anything on, we weren't gonna give him a mortgage. That's how it goes, so just be wary that, this is what we talk about, you have to figure out, I think Tosh says you gotta learn how to tiptoe through the tulips, right? You gotta figure out what your benefit is or what your detriment is to doing that. Absolutely.
Like even when I sign off on stuff, I don't only just put all rights reserved, I put Cote or BC, which means under the origin in my time. And so a lot of them don't even know what that means. So I'm signing it and then I'm putting all rights reserved.
Initial VC or back reference?
It depends. If it's like if they're asking for an initial, then I put BC ARR. Right? If it's my full signature, let's say because of a deal, I put the whole thing down. Right? Initially, the manager was like, well, "Where do you do it?" I'm just like, "Are you giving me legal advice?" That's it. And now it's just a normal thing. Now they see that and they're like, "Well, that's Francis' signature."
And then that's part of, and again, that's part of the whole thing with they're looking at well, we have this much records of you not reserving your rights. How come you start to, and then again the same thing, it's about what is the response that you give them with certain things. So, some Moors will be arguing these people down. Well, I got a right to give me legal advice. Well, I know you're not a lawyer or attorney right now to even be having any issue
You always
with
want to
this.
talk in question. You always want to always act as king or queen or as king.
You're saying answer the question with a question.
People don't understand when you understand asking.
Another one's the answer the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are like, are you giving me legal advice? Just ask them, put them on their plate, just quick questions.
But what do we do? So,
They can get into a contract, but they'll still need representative if there's contract.
so if that's the case, then everything is foolishness.
The whole thing is void
Yeah.
abolition.
But I would then say that then you'd have to qualify, if you're talking about the fiat and stuff, then you're talking about the legal anyways, right? So then you get yourself into trouble there. If you know better, then you wouldn't even do business with it, right? So then you would fall into sort of what I would call moral issues, where you know it's a fraud, and then you're trying to engage in activity with them on the fraud and trying to get a benefit from that. That's then where you're going to start running into problems as well.
Yeah, whereas having the mindset that you know that it's a fraud and then you're standing on truth. You're not trying to get something, not trying to get an account, not trying to discharge, you're trying to get a house and whatever. You're standing on truth, that's all. There's something wrong with standing on truth?
And I'll cancel back on that. All of us, like you said, all of us tomorrow get up and don't go to work. It's over. It's still about our energy. It's really about our energy. There is no finance, there is no money. It's what we give to it. We're trapped in that system. But we know this, as I said, for any of these other communities, they're all running short.
Yeah. They're short in their community.
The NDP leader, think about this. They got this NDP leader up in there, and we have never had anyone like that. These guys have just come over here now, and they're up in there running one of these parties. They got a whole territory. Even Chinatown, you go to those places. Those people, as I said, you go into those places, you can get and do anything you want in there. You don't come into those areas. That's what we're missing as a people. That's the sorcery that we have to get over. Loving each other. I mean, you see it. Most of the Manchurians, they don't love each other. There's this innate thing where they're about themselves.
They're about their own stuff.
They're about their own people before they're about you, even though they'll probably kill their brother. On the day when it comes down to fighting between the brother who they hate and you, they're both going to join hands and kill you before they kill each other. which is where our issue is.
But it's like I remember there was this girl in high school. She I don't think she was valedictorian, but she was up there. Asian girl, Ivy Poon. Ivy Poon every day brought rice. Every day of high school for 5 years. Rice in a little freaking rice every day. Rice. No lunch or ever go McDonald's today or go Burger King. Rice every day. Because that's just what they do, and they don't move from what they do. They do what it is that they do. Master that, and they're diligent in what they do. They don't switch up and change up and whatever, right? You're never gonna look into any type of other culture restaurant and see them in there. Because there's no, you know what I mean? Same thing with the Jews. You never look and see a Jew somewhere other than a Jewish whatever. You know what I mean? And then you look at them and see, oh, they got all this stuff going on. Okay, all right. Obviously something working with supporting your own. You got some more?
Yeah, just from the perspective, I think I've been thinking about this in the last couple of months, that one of our issues is, as the kings and queens that we are, we know that we're that inherently, subconsciously. But we've fallen from that. We have not yet been able to humble ourselves to understand how we have to get back. We have to sort of humble ourselves to the fact that we've fallen. And I think that's part of the sort of, from my perspective, I see that that's part of our issue, that we still have that essence of being kings and queens. That's why we don't stand for shit. But yet we haven't been able to figure out how to get back there.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about the same Chinese Manchurian guy. I have a guy that I work with who cleaning out a field, and there's bottles in the field, empty beer cans. He's picking up the empty beer cans. We're laughing at him. He's picking up the 6, 7 beer cans and bringing them to his car to go bring them back to taste. we laugh, but he's living in a house right now.
Yeah.
No, but you know what I'm
Picking
saying?
up beer cans.
None of us would humble ourselves to that level. But that's what it takes on this in this environment. If you're not one of the higher ups, that's what the kind of sacrifice you have to make.
That man's doing two things, though. He's cleaning the environment and making the
Well,
environment
that could be on that level.
and getting paid from it.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying his attention to the detail about what the finance really represents on certain levels, I think is where it's at. And his, you know, they say look after the pennies and the dollars, look after themselves. A lot of us, I know for myself, I don't operate like that. I see a nickel or a quarter, sometimes I walk by it. He's a man. I'll look down. He's picking up a nickel, and I'm sort of chuckling inside. But I realize that this is the kind of stuff that is what it's going to take for us to get ourselves back.
Going back to the rice.
Huh?
Every nickel makes a mackerel.
Yeah.
Right. Good.
Going back to the rice. Yeah, they don't change. Right? They hold on to their culture, but they do intellectually assimilate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One short example is they have their name, their national name, and then they have their English name. Like I said. Yeah. So it's their way of like, and they start off as children, as young ones, and they say, okay, well, we're going to control that part of the world, right? Not in the more like thinking brain concept, but like they know that, hey, you need to have this and you need to have that. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like interesting that maybe there's nothing wrong with assimilating. It's just you got to do it smart. You got to teach, right? You know your place exactly.
They honor their mother and their father.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to. They honor their ancestors
First
and foremost, and it's traditional.
You never forget the first rule.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you have to honor your foreparents, and if you don't,
The worst is yet to come.
Same thing on the way here. We all want to say we're kings and queens, and you treat your elderly and the other people who aren't doing so well in society like garbage. And that's our people, people like us. And I see it all the time, and I'm involved with people like that right now. We don't treat our elders properly. We don't. And until we start to humble ourselves, like you were saying, Omar, ain't nothing gonna
The
change.
worst is yet to come.
That's right.
I was watching this movie yesterday called Dark Tower with Idris Elba.
Yeah, I just watched that
Oh
movie.
my God, they
Yeah.
talk about everything they're talking about. How, like, when Idris Elba is like, sees, you know, a person in dishonor, he says, well, you forgot the face of your father.
Yeah.
He's the Moor, and then like Albion is just going around just causing rampage and everything, right? And it's all about like law. The whole thing is about law and status and remembering the ancient foremothers and forefathers. And it just blew my mind. I was like, this is right.
Yeah, Dark
Even like
Tower.
the people that were crazy on the street, they didn't have the Star Spangled Banner horizontal. Like the guy had it vertical, but it should be like
Yeah.
commerce, right? For commerce. And so it's just little things like that. I'm looking at it, I'm like, mind-blowing. Sect is divided into 5, and there's only one that's in honor, but he's the only one remaining in his planet. I know, like, you know, Earth or Keystone. That's like another, like the whole movie was just.
In your face.
I just wanted to give, they were talking, I can't remember. I was listening to a program, and they were honoring World War II or World War I, and they were talking about how, they were giving honors to the BBC, because they were talking about back when the war was going on, when, let's say, radio was there, but they were talking about how the BBC had been sending messages to their allies in the different segments, and that there were certain things that were being coded in the music, right? Not coded in the music, but coded in the messages.
Yeah.
And exactly what you're talking about, all of Hollywood and all this stuff, even with me and my Empress were talking about this tip thing. We're honoring who? Who are we honoring? Honoring the very process that has us, like you're saying, indoctrinated. Because they're giving you all that stuff in the movies. They're telling you everything. And what I've seen is it's our cooperation and our agreement with that on the etheric level that has them, because what they're doing is they're releasing their karmic debt. I'm telling you. Right? And the problem is, and this is what I'm
They're saying this, so they said, hey, we told you.
That's right.
Can I say that we were talking?
It's not on me. We're talking. We're just.
It's basically what it is. It's acquiescence. It's acquiescence on a metaphysical level.
They tell you that do the works. And then when you watch the movie Lord of the Rings, you realize, okay, like they really diced it down, really put it in your face. This is you fighting the mental West. Like, the place is called Mordor.
Of course.
I was here like, Mordor.
You know,
I'm like, bro, I'm gonna forget it.
One of the things you have to study is who the actual author is. You have to take a look at who J.R.R. Tolkien was. This man was one of these higher scientists.
The physician.
You miss what's going on. This is why I say for us, and this is what's been aggravating me the last week, that I love us all here, brothers, and I want to say thank you for all the support, but I'm looking for us to sort of split things into second and third gear. Because it's time for us, it really has been time for us to get to that next level. I see, even just in this is one of our neighborhoods. If anyone knows the area, we have Marley and Eglinton. That's the other little spot downtown here where we have a few little spots.
Yeah.
What else we got going on?
Yeah.
Really, what else we got going on? Not a thing.
Some restaurants.
A few little restaurants, and then we got our so-called physical gods, the ballers and the musicians, making millions and billions of dollars, who've all sold out to that thing, right?
You got the definition of it? The word. Just remember. Word, a person learning the law as an attorney, counselor, or solicitor, a person licensed to practice law. Any person who, for fee or reward, prosecutes or defends causes in court of the record or of the judicial tribunals of the United States or any of the states for whose business it is to give legal advice in relation to any cause or matter, Act of July 13, 1866. It's a lawyer.
Attorney?
Attorney?
Okay, so this is the Vice Dictionary, 4th edition. Attorney. In the most general sense, this term denotes an agent or substitute, or one who is appointed and authorized to act in the place or stead of another. An agent or one acting on behalf of another. One who is put in place, stead, and turn of another to manage his matters of law. an agent employed by party to case to manage it for him. When used with reference to the proceedings of courts or the transaction of business in the courts, the term always means attorney at law. And then down below that it says lawyer and attorney are synonymous.
Going back to what Rennie was saying, you said 1866, right? That's after the fall of the Constitution of the United States. That's when they sort of came up with the Act of
Well, like year after the emancipation. Year after the emancipation.
So after that is when the education system became educating and the standard of education was lowered so that people would become scholar in the future. They need
resort to the fact of feudal, which is fee, licensing, agitation, democracy, communism.
it needs.
In one section of his reasons that has caught the eye of the media, Justice Rook provides taxonomy of subsets of the OPCA community that he calls movements. Here he introduces us to detoxes, the first OPCA movement to appear in Canada, focused on avoiding income tax obligations. The Free Man on the Land, a newer Canadian innovation that is anti-government, libertarian, and right-wing. The Sovereign Man, Sovereign Citizen movement, the main American OPCA infamous for its members' violent conduct and paper terrorism, the Church of Ecumenical Redemption International, an Edmonton area pot church claiming that marijuana is linchpin of the Christian religion, and the Moorish law movement claiming that Black Muslims who self-identify as Moors are not subject to state or court authority because they are governed by their own law or because they are the original inhabitants of North and South America. This is article on the organized pseudo-legal commercial argument litigant case Meads versus Meads.
Well, they already, this doesn't include us because we are not Black Muslims.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, first, I was just reading vexatious proceeding because I couldn't get vexatious litigant.
Yeah.
And it says proceeding instituted maliciously and without probable cause. And the first case that they cite is Paramount Pictures versus Blumenthal. So this is corporations.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of malicious prosecution differing principally because based on civil action. When the party bringing proceedings is not acting bona fide and merely wishes to annoy or embarrass his opponent, or when it is not calculated to lead to any practical result. Such a proceeding is often described as frivolous and vexatious, and the court may stay it on that ground. And then, period, and then after that it says sweet. Period.
What?
You got that too?
That's a typo.
I know we were discussing that classes ago.
Yeah.
We're saying that it touches on like pretty much when they're out here trying to, get us to pay their fees or whatever for the little stuff the little bylaws that we break, right?
Right.
It's the same thing, right? It's vexatious proceedings, right?
Yeah, but they're saying that we're the ones.
Yeah,
So we counter that and say that's what it is on their part, vexatious.
And that C word is no typo, that's there because that's the argument. They know they're doing something wrong, they know they're unhappy with it, they know that we're getting vexed, and so they're waiting for that energy, that emotion to be displayed so that they can claim vexatiousness.
Yeah.
But we don't even fall into any of the groups that they named.
Yeah.
You see?
I mean, in standing up for what we, but if we acquiesce, then that's where they're gonna put morals.
As Black Muslims.
So it's for morals to say that they're not.
Right.
Because if we by leaving it to them, that's where it's gonna fall. So like even when they talk about The first OPCA movement to appear in Canada are the detaxers, the people who are trying to get out of taxes or whatever. That's Moorish. Because these people know that they're not supposed to be paying no tax if it's not represented.
Yeah, but they're putting that, they're saying that that was something that was being done by the free men on the land, which is not Moorish. They may not have that authority as free men on the land.
Right.
But because we're Moors and we're indigenous, we do have it, you know, so no matter how you slice it, they're trying to put us in a pool where we don't
belong.
Yeah.
Right.
What's interesting is, going back to the commercial thing that we're talking about, how people are stateless and, you know, Canada's in Washington, and so they're basically leaving Washington, going on the territory, and seeing whoever doesn't have a nation. Oh, you're an empty ship with no flag, I'm just gonna board you. And that's the commercial warfare that they're doing on everybody. And so being free man on the land, you're still stateless.
Yeah.
Right? You still
Still
don't
have
have a
no
nation.
nation.
Oh, you're Canadian? Oh, okay. Well, when were you born in McDonald's? You were born here, let me see McDonald's. Oh yeah, he's stateless. He has no nation. All right, come with us. You know? So they're just going around. The whole center is literally Washington. And then whoever doesn't have a nation, they're just going around on the waters and on the land. Oh, you have no representation, or you have no so-and-so. Okay, well, you're not representing anybody, or you don't have representation. What country are you from? Well, you're from where are? Okay, you need to come back with us.
You don't know where you're from? I'll tell you.
Exactly.
You don't know who you are? I'll tell you.
Exactly. Alright, so you could be free man on the land, but you're still stateless if you don't have a nation. You ain't gonna be free for long.
OPCA concepts and arguments in Canadian case law. Justice Rook begins this section by noting that there are only a limited number of OPCA concepts, with old schemes often recycled using different terminology. He then describes a number of implausible concepts that are common to OPCA litigants, including a litigant is not subject to court authority, an idea with three variations. One, the jurisdiction of the court is restricted to certain specific domains because the court is an admiralty court or a military court, or because its jurisdiction is less than that of a notary public, or because religious authority trumps the court's jurisdiction. Two, the authority of the court is eliminated due to some defect, such as the lack of judicial robe, or the wrong version of the Bible in the courtroom, or the supposed defect in the 1931 Statute of Westminster. Three, an OPCA litigant is immunized from the court's actions, and I deal with three main categories. A, no legal obligation can be enforced on the OPCA litigant without his or her agreement. An argument with a variety of odd reasons advanced. Example, because they belong to an exempt group, such as that of a sovereign flesh and blood living man, or that of citizens of Texas, an independent nation state, or that of a fictitious aboriginal group, because they unilaterally declare themselves immune, especially from income tax liability, because they are free man on the land or sovereign citizen, because they are subject to a different law, such as a medieval judge-made common law that trumps and excludes legislation or the Uniform Commercial Code, or because they are a conscientious objector or a tax protester. B, a person who has two legal aspects or can be split into two legal entities as evidenced by the structure of the name or its upper or lowercase letters and the wrong aspects as identified in the court documents. And an OPCA litigant can unilaterally bind the state or state actor, a court or other persons with a foisted argument. Justice Rook also includes a description of the inherent authority of provincial superior courts in order to explain why OPCA litigants are subject to their jurisdiction. He discusses inherent jurisdiction, procedural jurisdiction, and subject jurisdiction, and how and why the jurisdiction of Canada's superior courts defeats OPCA strategies. Right, so the three variations that they say this OPCA is not subject to court authority. Jurisdiction of the court is restricted to certain specific domains because the court is an admiralty court or a military court, or because its jurisdiction is less than that of a notary, or because religious authority trumps the court's jurisdiction. So that goes back to the thing that we were saying earlier with the status being the first issue. If status is waived, then jurisdiction is the next issue. And in jurisdiction, you got personam, subject matter, territorial. Once they claim none of those, once they prove none of those, then they don't have jurisdiction. It has to be proven that they have subject matter. It has to be proven that they have territorial. It has to be proven that they have jurisdiction over the individual who's standing in that room. That's not OPCA litigant, whatever, right? That's jurisprudence. That's the science that treats natural law, that status is first, jurisdiction is next. If jurisdiction can't be proven, then everything's supposed to be off the table, because jurisdiction is not something that they can assume to have jurisdiction, right? It's like the one mother that she was going to court back and forth for forever. And then the judge finally said, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to ask you one question, and this is going to determine whether we dismiss everything or whether we kidnap you right now. Where do you live? In my body. Case dismissed.
That's very few say that.
Because she was challenging jurisdiction, they weren't proving anything, and it was a stalemate. Right? It was a draw. And in a draw, it's not a nobody wins or somebody wins or whatever. Everything just off the table in a draw. Right? The authority of the court is eliminated due to some defeat, such as lack of judicial robes or wrong version of the Bible in the court or supposed defect in 1931 Statute of Westminster. So when we go to the those tribunals and they tell you go to court, and then you go to court and court has a sign on there that says business hours. That's not a court. Administration there, all they're dealing about is getting their finance. So it should be expected, it should be expected that, oh, they're probably gonna want some finance if we come up in there, right? And then also with the Statute of Westminster, recognize that anything that they have put in place to say that Canada is a country, Canada is law, Canada is whatever like that, is all based in them trying to avoid the fact that there's no such thing as Canada like that. There's no territorial jurisdiction of Canada. That's corporate only.
Articles of the Confederation.
Right?
That was usurped, right? So after 1861, they took that and they incorporated it to a second colony or a second corporation, because the colony corporation is the same, right? And so then they said, okay, now this is a new company. Well, we just overthrew the previous, quote unquote government. So we need new treaties because we are no longer under the United States, and that in Westminster is associated with England. So let's go to these Indian guys and let's do this. And that's when the first treaty of with quote unquote Indians at 1871, right? But that's all fraudulent. It's all ab initio. It's all wait, why? Because the original Constitution and its Articles of Confederation, its adjoining documents such as the treaties and stuff, that's all still in force because it was just sine die. But it's paused and it's meant to be taken up in a future date. So we're in this one phase of government called parent something, I forget the exact word, but it's basically an intermediary government between two when I say du jour governments.
The national and the
Yeah, so there's, I forget the word is, but there's this one Latin word where it talks about when the national government is down and it's taking a pause until the next in line comes in to take over the national government. That's what they're declaring this is for, right? They're saying it's between that shift, right? Because it's a two number word. Sort of, but it's like it's in the civil orders and Rules Appropriate 2013, where the Pope is telling his associates. It's in that letter where he talks to say parents something. Yeah, where it's like the pseudo government, this and that. And so I was looking up that word, and then it's like, okay, between two national governments, there's this pause while the next era comes into play. And so like the priesthood will sort of run the administration.
So everybody's mad with Britain right now because of them doing the same thing. We're going to pause Parliament so we figure out whatever's going on. What are you talking about? How are you pausing? How are you taking the position to pause something that you don't have jurisdiction to pause stuff? If the people are who the government is and whatever.
But again, I guess that's notice, so unless somebody speaks up upon the notice, then
Right.
never need to
But again, too, it also goes to the thing with the people thinking that that's the government,
ignorance.
and then they're caught up now.
Right.
Because they're thinking that oh wow, the government's pausing, we gotta wait for something to happen or whatever, when they can just do whatever they're supposed to do. Because they already know that these people are corrupt and they're a fraud and they've been doing stuff wrong for however long. The idea that all legally enforceable rights require that a person agree to be subject to those obligations takes two forms. One, the argument that every binding legal obligation, including those between state actors, emerges from a contract, an argument that denies the authority of legislatures to impose unilateral obligations. Two, the argument that consent is required before an obligation can be enforced, so that a person is immune if they simply say they have not consented to the subject. They have not consented to be subject to the law and the courts, or if the contract is a foisted agreement, or if they indicate their non-consent with a mantra such as "I accept that for value and consideration and honor." Double split persons. Double split persons. Another common OPCA concept is that an individual can exist in two separate but related states, a concept expressed in many different ways. The physical person aspect is often described with a dash colon or family clan house of motif. The other aspect is a non-corporeal aspect, such as straw man, a corporation, a corporate fiction, a dead corporation, a dead person, an estate, a legal person, a legal fiction, an artificial entity, a procedural phantom, a slave name, a juristic person. Some gurus see the non-corporeal aspect as state-created. Others claim only it can be affected by the state. Some assert that these two linked imaginary personalities can interact with one another and create trust relationships and contracts. So part of this too is with the idea of claim the birth certificate. And the gurus that go that route aren't letting the people know that if you're claiming something that's not yours, that's theft. The other part of it is that if the quote-unquote straw man is a person, whether it's fictitious, artificial, or whatever, and you're claiming a person, that's slave trade. And then they're saying slavery is supposed to be abolished. But then you're going and claiming persons. And then saying you own them and you're the holder in due course of another person. That's slave trade. It's not put out like that. So by putting it out like that, then then that whole game, that whole money-making game of, you know, do UCCs or whatever, claim the straw man, that stuff's up. Because nobody wants to be a slave master of anybody. And again, by us using the ex-relation with regard to the straw, opposed to hold it in due course or claiming it or whatever, by saying ex-relation, we're showing that that entity that they have on all the documents is not me, but there is information relative to me that is housed by that document or by those documents that create this so-called jurisdiction. Okay.
Which, and to put it a little, another degree, that strongman is not the living human individual.
Being, right.
It's a person, it's a corporation.
Right.
So that argument doesn't hold any water on it. It's like you're finding to be these two entities, not when we're using ex-relation in any case. You know what I mean? So that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't apply to us. I don't know who else might apply to.
Right. Responses to OPCA strategies, litigants and gurus. In several different places in his decision, Justice Rook identifies the variety and range of responses to OPCA litigants and litigation that Canadian courts have adopted. He encourages any judge who faces OPCA litigation to consider deployment of all tools in this arsenal and others that may be developed for this difficult litigant category. Now, as soon as they start talking about deployment and arsenal, they're talking about war. And if it's that serious, then you better know the truth about your nationality and birthrights, because these people aren't playing. If they're talking about deploying stuff on you when you go in there, and then using OPCA as the means to deploy these things on you, right? Arsenal and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, you'll always notice on a lot of these banners, misnomer those flags, they'll have the gold fringes. That's a military tribunal. And so what they're doing is because people are stateless and they're trying to be sovereign, but they have no nation because everything's governed by treaties. That's what makes the divine national movement so strong, is that they said you're a foreigner, you're going to be taxed because you don't have any treaty with us. And because you're stateless, you're going to be appearing, even though you don't know your forefathers, as a special appearance civilian in our jurisdiction, and you're going to get court-martialed. That's literally what's happening. Quote-unquote civilians are appearing as special appearance in their dockets, and they're getting court-martialed right there and then, because they're stateless and they have no treaties, because they think they're going to mean something if they say, you know, I'm a sovereign, but I forgot my ancient foremothers and forefathers. So how sovereign are you again?
Right. Justice Rook offers suggestions for procedural responses by court clerks and judges to suspected OPCA documents and conduct for court staff. He recommends they reject documents that do not conform to established requirements, mark non-compliant materials as received rather than filed, and forward materials with OPCA characteristics to a judge for review before filing. In the courtroom, he notes that additional in-court security is usually warranted, including searches for and removal of prohibited electronic recording equipment, and in the event of supporters disrupting proceedings or posing physical threats, the closing of the courtroom to the public. He identifies 7 different types of civil responses to OPCA strategies that have been used by the courts in this section of his judgment, which I have combined with his ideas in the later section about other possible courses of action. A, judicial responses. 1, strike actions, motions, and defenses. Proceedings are struck based on incomprehensible arguments and allegations, and actions and defenses are struck based on the court's inherent jurisdiction to control its own process and prevent abuse.
Incomprehensible? So they can't understand it, so therefore they're going to strike it, and it can't be filed, or it can't be whatever, it's gotta be, you know, like,
Yeah.
this is all so unconstitutional. It's
Yeah.
not even funny.
Yep.
That's crazy. This is crazy.
And that's what's the jurisdiction of them is to make sure that they stick to their unconstitutional position. Because as soon as they go constitutional, all their stuff is done.
Yeah.
Because now people have something that they can hold them to. And constitution not being constitution acts and ordinances, statutes, or whatever. Punitive damages were specifically sought by the party opposing an OPCA litigant. Punitive damages may be appropriate for pretrial misconduct. For example, liens filed on the basis of a foisted unilateral agreement, an OPCA scheme already identified by the courts and dismissed as ineffective, should attract punitive damages. So when, for example, there might be a couple of DVDs with Brother Alim, and you know, again, back then when they were going against these so-called tribunals or whatever like that, drugs would be getting leaned regular. It would be a regular thing. That, oh, you don't know what your oath is? Lean. Oh, you don't know law? Lean. Oh, you don't know whatever? Lean. Just because you're claiming some judicial authority that we know you don't have. Now it's gotten to the point now where that idea of not having judicial authority is a stance that they take now. Like they're content in their, we don't have judicial authority. So we'll say that we're justices and we'll say that we're judges or whatever when they have nothing to do with any of that stuff. Everything is a front to make it appear to the dumb public like this is how stuff runs. But it's not, that's not how it goes. Right? It's like when we went to Reddy's hearing and the lady at the thing, she's pretending that she got some authority of something. Well, I don't think that I'm gonna deny you or whatever because you came into my room and I don't think that, all right, cool, you do your little thing. We appeal that to a higher people and then now she doesn't have no say now. Because how's she gonna make decisions? Yeah, how is she an immigrant trying to make decisions on immigration stuff? She's not from here. She's a foreigner too. The same thing that applies to whoever they're bringing into immigration, whatever, applies to these foreigners that are claiming to be judges or whatever. Because they're foreign, just like the people they're claiming that need certain paperwork to be here or whatever.
I remember too, she said herself she was like she didn't have the jurisdiction, she couldn't hear it, you know.
She was one to do some people about the paper. Remember, she was asking you guys to process that.
Yeah, she didn't. She just said sorry. I couldn't, like, you know, like incomprehensible. Like I can't comprehend.
Yeah,
her knowledge wasn't up there, you know. Like he's just doing it, you know.
And what she doing in the seat?
right.
That's
Exactly.
Well, yeah,
Exactly.
The reason why I was there, you know, somebody is
She's something.
up here like on your phone or something. Yeah,
something like that.
yeah, something like that.
So, I don't know if she said that she couldn't. She didn't. She said she told me she was sorry. And that's what I got out of her. So, she was sorry for not comprehending the law.
Again, which is admittance of incompetence.
For real.
That's how they try.
B, lawyers. 1, refuse to notarize OPCA documents. 2, Triage, identification of legal issues. A lawyer has a duty to identify the real issues in dispute and facilitate the quickest means of resolving the claim at the least expense. Lawyers for targeted litigants can assist judges in understanding what the real legal issues are buried in the mass of documents usually filed by OPCA litigants. Education of judges. In parts of Alberta and Canada with less exposure to OPCA litigants, their concepts and in-court misconduct, lawyers may find it useful to provide some background and evidence to a judge, with Justice Rook's reasons serving as useful starting point. Justice Rook,
Was that in parts of Alberta and Canada?
yeah, like Alberta's not part of it, right? Justice Rook encourages lawyers to research relevant case law and submit background evidence on OPCA litigation and concepts that explains the particular strategies advanced in a specific dispute. He identifies the following information in particular, some easily obtainable because OPCA litigants often post it online forums run by OPCA gurus.
That's you.
Right?
That's you.
Look it up. Education of OPCA litigants. Justice Rook encourages lawyers representing targeted litigants to try to inform an opposing OPCA litigant about court cost awards and provide them with cases that directly relate to arguments the OPCA litigant is trying to advance. Other responses. Justice Rook's list of possible court responses suggests a few other useful actions that lawyers can take. Apply for payment into court of security for costs, especially if the OPCA litigant or guru denies the authority or jurisdiction of the court. Apply for a case management judge as soon as possible. Bring any physical threats to the court's attention.
So wait a second, are they saying that if we challenge their authority, they can charge us for that?
Right.
Make us pay?
Yeah. Apply a payment.
Oh, yeah, wasting your time,
Yeah.
vexatious, litigant, this is what you get.
So we're vexatious because we have something that we want to clear up, right? So they came here running away from oppression and all that. But when we're oppressed and we say we don't want to be oppressed anymore, we're being vexatious.
Oh,
It is a way to say.
that's what I'm saying, you have terminology, you turn it on them, more rich, right?
You know,
And that they're vexatious.
for real.
This is not, I don't think this is for us, we just kind of got lumped into this.
Well, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You shouldn't even be in here.
Right, but your status is the first thing, right?
Yes,
So then this all kind
that's all.
Yeah.
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 but you gotta see where they're coming at us from.
Yes.
Yeah, which is the point of putting this out, so we can see where their points of attack are
Yeah.
because of them looping us into this OPCA creation, you know, so that we can see what they're gonna be presenting, what their arguments are gonna be, and our defense being based on our nationality and birthrights, not processes or things that have nothing to do with our position of truth. A new type of vexatious litigant. Justice Rook indicates that OPCA litigants are very different from ordinary vexatious litigants. It is true that the motifs, concepts, and arguments OPCA litigants get from the OPCA gurus are unusual and identifiable. However, aside from the source of their materials, just how different some of the OPCA litigants are from the ordinary vexatious litigant, to what extent are some OPCA litigants merely desperate litigants who have conducted internet searches looking for information helpful to their cases and seizing OPCA material? Professor Herman argues that we can understand ordinary vexatious litigation as being about a passionate search for justice, as opposed to an obsession, and that rather than suffering from delusions, many typical vexatious litigants may instead be very well aware of the reality, but simply not prepared to accept or succumb to it. To what extent does this describe at least some of the OPCA litigants? Many of the groups who appeared before the Law Reform Committee of the Parliament of Victoria warned about casting the vexatious litigant net too widely. For example, the written joint submission of the Public Interest Law Clearinghouse and Human Rights Law Resource Center argued the common characteristics of vexatious litigants, based on our experience and research, include a lack of insight into the unmeritorious nature of the proceedings they bring to court, an inability by some to accept legal advice, and an almost obsessive need to keep returning to court seeking justice after being rebuffed time and time again. Vexatious litigants are also prone to creating an illusionary web of conspiracy against them, comprised of public figures, the judiciary, and any organization or individual who they have come into conflict with. Some also have unrealistic expectations of the legal system and at times seek redress that is grossly disproportionate to their grievance. If the ordinary vexatious litigant is prone to creating an illusionary web of conspiracy against them, comprised of public figures, the judiciary, and any organization or individual who they have come into conflict with, how different are they from the old PCA litigant? Once again, more research and scholarship is needed. Greetings, come on. You can have a seat.
So who was saying that? Sorry, who was saying that last part there? That was from Human Rights Law Center.
That was for a while. C-A-N-A-N.
Anything count?
No, everything lowercase. From Public Interest Law Clearinghouse and Human Rights Law Resource Center. Public Interest Law Clearinghouse and Human Rights Law Resource Center. Any comments with regard to anything else or questions? Any more additions? If you have your Quran, our reading today is chapter 35, Holy Instructions from the Prophet, Religion. Chapter 35. In the little book, page 80. Holy Instructions from the Prophet, Religion. There is but one Allah, the author, the creator, the governor of the world, almighty, eternal, and incomprehensible. The sun is not Allah, though his noblest image. He enlighteneth the world with his brightness. His warmth giveth life to the products of the earth. Admire him as the creature, the instrument of Allah, but worship him not. To the one who is supreme, most wise and beneficent, and to him alone belong worship, adoration, and thanksgiving and praise. Who hath stretched forth the heavens with his hands? Who hath described with his finger the courses of the stars? Who setteth bounds to the ocean that it cannot pass, and saith unto the stormy winds, be still? Who shaketh the earth, and the nations tremble? Who dareth his lightnings, and the wicked are dismayed? Who calleth forth worlds by the words of his mouth? Who smitteth with his arm, and they sink into nothing? O reverence the majesty of the Omnipotent, and tempt not his anger, lest thou be destroyed. The province of Allah is ever all in his works. He ruleth and directeth with infinite wisdom. He hath instituted laws for the government of the world. He hath wonderfully varied them in all beings, and each by his nature conformeth his will. In the depth of his mind, he revolveth all knowledge. The secrets of futurity lie open before him. The thoughts of thy heart are naked to the view. He knoweth thy determination before they are made. With respect to his prescience, with respect to his prescience, there is nothing contingent. With respect to his providence, there is nothing accidental. Wonderful he is in all his ways. His counsels are inscrutable, and manner of his knowledge transcendeth thy conception. Pay therefore to his wisdom all honor and veneration, and bow down thyself in humble and submissive obedience to his supreme discretion. The Father is gracious and beneficent. He hath created the world in mercy and love. His creatures of his hand declare his goodness, and their enjoyments speak of his praise. He clothed them with beauty, he supported them with food, he preserved them with pleasure from generation to generation. If we lift up our eyes to the heavens, his glory shineth forth. If we cast them down to earth, it is full of his goodness. The hills and valleys rejoice and sing. Fields, rivers, and woods resound his praise. But thee he hath distinguished with peculiar favor, and exalted thy station above all creatures. He hath endowed thee with reason to maintain thy dominion. He hath fitted thee with language to improve thy society, and exalted thy mind with the powers of meditation, of the powers of mediation, to contemplate and adore his immutable perfections. And in the laws he hath ordained as the rule of life. So kindly hath he united thy duty to thy nature, that obedience to his precepts is happiness to thyself. O praise his goodness with songs of thanksgiving, and meditate in silence on the wonders of his love. Let thy heart overflow with gratitude and acknowledgement. Let the language of thy lips speak praise and adoration. Let the actions of thy life show thy love to his law. Allah is just and righteous, and will judge the earth with equity and truth. Hath he established his laws in goodness and mercy? And shall he not punish the transgressors thereof? O think not, bold man, because thy punishment is delayed, that the arm of Allah is weakened. Neither flatter thyself with the hopes that he winketh at. His eye pierceth the secrets of every heart, and he remembereth them forever. He respecteth not the persons or the stations of men, the high and the low, the rich and the poor, the wise and the ignorant. When the soul hath shaken off the cumbrous shackles of this mortal life, shall equally receive from the sentence of just and everlasting retribution according to their works. Then shall the wicked tremble and be afraid, but the heart of the righteous shall rejoice in his judgments. O fear Allah therefore all the days of life, and walk in the paths which he hath opened before thee. Let prudence admonish thee, let temperance restrain, let justice guide thy hand, benevolence warm thy heart, and the gratitude to heaven inspire thee with devotion. These shall give thee happiness in the present state, and bring thee to the mansions of eternal felicity in the praise of Allah. This is the true economy of human life. Islam. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, there's some religion, because there's a lot of confusion about religion itself, right?
Right.
Whole religion itself, different forms of religion and whatnot. I think, prophecies, like instruction, like how you wear this and that. It's simply it's comprehensive. And right here it says, how it says, how we thank Allah that are good doings and whatnot, waiting for a sign in the sky to say, hey, you know, like, I've been doing good for so long, and you know, waiting for that acknowledgement or whatever, you know. It's just, it says right there, you just keep going, right? You just keep going. That's just the only acknowledgement, or the only acknowledgement you should be looking for is that, within yourself that you did what you're supposed to do, which kept you on a higher plane instead of a little vibration, right? You can go home and sleep all night, right?
Exactly. Oh, think not, bold men, because thy punishment is delayed, that the arm of Allah is weakened. Neither flatter thyself with hopes that he winketh at thy doings. Right? So doing without expecting, unconditional love, unconditional appreciation, respect, just because that's the right thing to do. Not because we know Allah is going to bless us because we're righteous or whatever that we do righteousness. We just be righteous. Just be that. Just manifest that in our dealings with each other and dealings with other people.
And another one too is this whole thing, old men, the whole punishment thing being delayed. The whole song for that is no promise, there's nobody, right?
Right.
Even in parts one,
Where your desires outweigh your good deeds, then you're thinking that it's gonna go on unseen, that's what it's saying right here, promise there's no.
You were saying
yeah,
what was it?
for line 20, but he hath imbued with reason to maintain thy dominion. He hath filled thee with language to improve thy society, and exalted thy mind with the powers of meditation to contemplate and adore his amenable perfections. It's like, we gave you a mind, like, you are mind, you are language, you are your culture. Not just reacting. Protect it. There's others out there that will be more active for you if you don't have to take care of your domain.
Right. Allah is just and righteous and will judge the earth with equity and truth. Hath he established his laws in goodness and mercy, and shall he not punish the transgressors thereof? Is that what we were talking about on the way up here, Mocha? With certain people's activity, that they think they can just do whatever and get away with it because, Allah didn't get them yet.
Allah's just giving them rope.
Yeah.
That one needs a hard drip.
Right. The high and the low, the rich, the poor, the wise, the ignorant, when the soul has shaken off the cumbrous shackles of this mortal life, shall equally receive from the sentence of just and everlasting retribution according to their works. So again, according to how we exist, how we live on the earth plane, is going to determine once we're done with this shell, what's really going to go down. And not because we did some righteousness here and then, Allah blessed us and we stumbled over something that, oh, wow, Allah's blessing me. Thank you, Allah, for giving me this. That ain't it. When you leave this mortal life is when you're going to really see what it is about, as far as your works that you did on the earth.
Don't fear it. Don't fear that. So everybody's thinking nowadays, what's happening?
Right? And then one more thing, since that was religion, we'll just read this too. What is Islam? Islam is a very simple faith. It requires man to recognize his duties toward God Allah, his creator, and his fellow creatures. It teaches the supreme duty of living at peace with one's surroundings. It is preeminently the religion of peace. The very name Islam means peace. The goal of a man's life according to Islam is peace with everything, peace with Allah and peace with man. The Quran, the holy book of Islam, tells us that the final abode of man is the house of peace, where no vain word or sinful discourse will be heard. The holy divine prophet Noble Ali says that a follower of Islam in the true sense of the word is one whose hands, tongues, and thoughts don't hurt others. An object of man's life according to Islam is its complete unfoldment. Islam teaches that man is born with unlimited capacities for progress. Islam does not support the idea that man was born in sin. It teaches that everyone has within him the seed of perfect development, and it rests solely within himself to make or mar his fortune. The cardinal doctrine of Islam is the unity of the Father Allah. We believe in one God, Allah who is all God, all mercy and all power. He is perfect and holy, all wisdom, all knowledge, and all truth. These are some of his great attributes so far as we understand. He is free from all defects, holy and transcendent. He is personal to us insofar as we see his attributes working for us and in us, but he is nevertheless impersonal. Because he is infinite, perfect, and holy, we do not believe that decay, death, or sleep overtake him. Neither do we believe that he is a helpless, inactive, and inert force. Nothing happens without his knowledge and will. He neither begets nor is he begotten, because these are the trails of a frail and weak humanity. This unity of Allah is the first and foremost pillar of Islam, and every other belief hangs upon it. Islam. Couple of things you can put out any questions. If you have any questions, you can put those out. But still, did you do or not even a proclamation in your writs, when you do writs or whatever? What are some of the parties who you put on notice?
Yeah.
Whenever whether it's proclamations or writs or whatever like that.
Some of the carbon copies?
Yeah. Some of the carbon copy individuals that you put on notice.
Well, there'd be sort of like understanding the principle behind it, and then you can find people that are in that. So like there'd be the municipal, state, and then the federal level, because they're all sort of acting on the ignorance behalf. And so you find wherever your territory and wherever the Inquisition operations are represented. There's that. There's also the creed level, where it's a nicely Constantinople creed, or quote unquote Christian creed, who's the archbishop in your region, in your territory. So finding an archbishop who would basically be one of those people. Also, because they're here under commerce and not just treaty reasons, you'd also want to talk to the comptroller for your region. So like if you get comptroller for Canada, lieutenant governor and attorney general for both, because it's also a military occupation. And that would, so you get to choose. It depends on what you're talking about. If it's something like a traffic ticket, then they'll try to put it in municipal, but then it's actually a diversity issue, so it goes all the way even higher than it goes to district court or federal or international court. But you just want to send them your proclamation and your additional notice of name correction. You're not telling them to change their record. You're just saying, hey, this is for your public information. This is a private issue. I just want you to let know that I've CC'd you. You're not expecting a response back from them, right? So that's why you can still use municipal province, because you're not trying to give them recognition. You're just letting them know, hey, some of your ignorant coworkers and employees might come harass me. just put them on, like, let them know that I'm already taking care of this, so let them go to their department and find the paperwork that wants to submit. The dogma of religion, the commercial aspect, the military aspect, and also, when it comes to international events, there's a few places, the Torrance, there's Washington, there's New York, there's The Hague, there's the Vienna Convention. These are all one of the world. So these are all international venues. Right? The Hague basically works with the ICC, the International Criminal Courts. Now, mind you, most of these places are obviously de facto, right? But the backbone, how they became de facto, is through the treaty, peace of friendship. They used that model and they made it into a de facto system. So all of this is based off of the Moroccan treaty with the United States of America.
Right, so again, you can pull up notice in the law dictionary. So we have our notice. Judicial proclamation, name correction. So with some of the issues that we've been dealing with our friend, we have this cut down to a 6-page document. Or seven including this stuff. Name corrections 1 and judicial proclamations 1. The judicial proclamation and name correction is what they're doing in trying to give you the stack of papers that you fill out all these papers or whatever like that in order to quote unquote be a Moor, right? The truth of the matter is that we've been misclassified as something that we're not, right? They've been telling us that we're, Black, Negro, Trinidadian, Jamaican, all these colonial terms, when they know that we're not that. But because we've said nothing for so long, it's become the norm that it's just accepted that we're that. So we're doing these things in order to put notice to these people that you might see me out there, but don't think that I'm like everybody who's out there. Know that based on these documents, that's the position that I'm taking. Or some words might say nationality card. Right? Based on this instrument is who it is that I am. Don't think that because you see a birth certificate or you see a visa or you see a whatever, that's who I am, right? We're also putting them on notice that we're the actual real Aboriginal Indigenous people, not the people that they've been pretending are the Aboriginal Indigenous people, right? So by putting them on this notice, it's not for them to say something or send us back something or whatever. It's just a notice. Just like when they're about to cut your lights, they give you a notice. 6 days, we're going to cut you. You can reply or not reply. Most of the time, they have some type of stipulation in there that, if you reply by whatever, we would cancel the notice and you get to keep your whatever, right? So we say, from the municipal perspective, to put them on notice because they're the ones that we see most, right? These are the people that we see least, federal people. But the municipal people, we see all the time. So, for example, Brother Moor, some of them have actually gone to these people and dropped their stuff off for them. Some people say, you know, put it in an envelope, mail it. That's notice. You don't have to go there and drop it off, right? OPP, for example, when I got stopped by them and put them on notice of my status, they were the ones that said, well, you know, we get it, what you're saying, but these guys, they might not play lawful like we play lawful. Because the municipal, is a corporation that they don't have anything to do with law or anything like that. They are, like one of the brothers was saying in the back, they are, you know, McDonald's, Walmart, or whatever, trying to tell you that there's a mayor and then you're going over there to pretend like they're actually government when they're just no different than Walmart or some other corporation out there. When you go to certain jurisdictions, I know in with regard to Toronto, they took it off, but I know Brampton, Mississauga, certain places, they say on their ticket, the corporation of whatever, right? They know people are not thinking, so they're just gonna put out stuff, knowing that people don't think, right? The position of the premier, again, being provincial, they're a corporation. They're the next level up from whatever Walmart, whatever corporation is local. Then you have the provincial level of corporate employees, right? So these would be the premier, all the different ministers or whatever, right? These would be all the different MPs and different jurisdictions in the local jurisdiction. And then when you get to the federal people, the standard is supposed to be, there's a maximum law. Notice the agent is notice the principal. Notice the principal is notice the agent. Meaning that whoever you tell in this scope, they're supposed to let everybody else know. But we know out here that municipal is not going to tell provincial, provincial is not going to tell federal, federal is not going to tell whatever. So we just let all of them know the position it is that we're taking. So that way we're not confused in dealing with them that, well, maybe they didn't know or maybe they didn't get told or whatever. We know that we either went drop something off for them or we put something in the mail for them, right? But like we were talking about in the week with the 7 locations to send the people to, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is what it's supposed to be under the whole thing of notice the agent is notice the principal. Because once you tell the federal is supposed to make copies of all your stuff and then send it to everybody else so they know. But we know that they're not dealing with being lawful. So we're not going to leave anything up to them to assume that they're going to do it. We're going to take it on ourselves, make sure that we do the envelope and we send our stuff off so they know what our position is. And again, it's not that we're doing that to expect something from them. It's just a standard that we have to do because we've been denationalized. We've been denationalized, which again is international war crime, which is why we might also send it to the UN and the Hague and whoever else just to let them know as well. Again, not to get any response. This is just for notice purposes.
But it's in the registered mail.
Right? Instead of registered mail, certified mail,
Actually, that they received it.
certified, registered.
Will you send it to somebody? Like find an individual to send it to?
If there's well, for example, like, you know, mayor would have a name, you know, whoever would have a name, so you're addressing the actual individual on the envelope, right? Yeah. So Hague and UN. So you're gonna look for what's it called again? Report. reporter or whatever like that, whatever name it is. You just look them up. UN, and they have all the titles of people who are in there.
Basically look like Secretary of Records. Right, you want to put everything on record. When you go to court, whether it's municipal, federal, you want everything to be a part of record. Same thing, you just want to look for the office, of course, some sort of record, and let them know, okay, hey, so and so doing this. You send it to them, doing this may concern the Secretary of Records.
But remember, with the whole aspect of them having these titles is to hide that they're foreigners, right? So they'll say the Honorable Governor General of Canada and all that, but not mention the individual,
Right.
because that individual more likely is a foreigner, right? So yeah, making sure that you address them by name with their title, so there's no confusion as to who you're sending these stuff to. On your president.
I've noticed that.
Yeah.
So notice, it's on the Black's Law 4th edition. There's also an observation, whether the license is of the mind or the mind. Knowledge of the existence or fact or state of the affairs. Means of knowledge. And has the knowledge of facts which would naturally be honest, good information to make an inquiry that constitutes notice and everything such inquiry pursued in good faith with disclose. In another sense, notice means information and advice are written more or less formal shape intended to provide personal for some proceeding in which his intents or interests are involved. Was by performing him under some fact of which it is his right to know and the duty of one party to communicate. And that's notice. Notice. All right. So yeah, so like we say, because of the level of the deceit that they've been exercising, we don't leave it up to them to pass this word on. We would make sure that we let anybody and everybody know who we think needs to know about our status correction. Right? And again, it's things that, we know that there's been, we know that there are certain obligations that they have to our people. But us not letting them know what those obligations are, then they can't be held to anything. Right? So this is which is why, for example, with like we were saying earlier, individuals who are taking the position of correcting their status, they're either going from the physical perspective or they're going from the spiritual perspective of this. That they're not even going here as far as letting these people know anything. Because these people already know that we're Moors. And they're exercising based on what they have here. They're not exercising based on, oh, well, I got this paper now, and now this paper says that whatever. So because I have this paper, that means that I'm whatever. Or because I have this card, it means that I'm whatever, right? They go by what it is here. So, for example, with who's not here, Brother Yasoon, him having so much interactions with the highwaymen, with the police, that they stopped calling him by the name on licenses, because every time they approach him, he's like, "I'm not that. You're not gonna get to call me that name that you think that I am or whatever. I'm telling you who I am right now. That's what you're going by." To the point now where they're telling him Mr. L and all that. They don't even try to call him by the straw. Because from a spiritual perspective, he's judicially proclaimed and name corrected, not paper. It's all about what he's doing here.
It's like the other day when I went up here and I saw one that I told not to address him by the straw.
Right.
And I saw him and I said, "You remember?" He said, "How could I forget?" How could I? I'll never forget. So you remember.
Brother Omar, you had something?
And then I was just gonna add to that, though, the situation with Hussein and his establishing establishing his position in regards to his navigating on the land and versus driving. You sort of have to take a position like yourself that you're not going to be combating them in that realm, because that is where they use their conviction codes. So for you to sort of carry yourself, because that's one of their main sort of avenues to sort of mess you up and extract finance. One of the things he's had to capitulate to is to say that he's not going to be sort of battling on that level.
Right.
So I'm putting that out there to say that you have to pick your battle, or you should want to pick your battles, because we have other stories with other Moors holding their position and people punching in the window, dragging them out of the car, and all that. I want to continue to remind people to take small steps with this, because you may get responses. They will come back and say, "Well, I didn't expect to be locked in jail for a week." Well, we didn't tell you to go out there and take the plates off your vehicle and start speeding around, because it will result with their highwaymen with a lot of stuff happening to you. So depending on what your position is, we will always advise you. So like Cujo had said before, to sort of acquiesce, take whatever sort of take whatever so-called bills of attainder or fraudulent tickets that they want to give you, and take the battle to their superiors, versus sort of trying to
battle these people down.
Try and get some guy who has no more than like a grade 12 or a grade 10 education. You're trying to sort of you're trying to educate him on nationality principles. You're going to run into a lot of problems. So I continue to always remind people to study, and to take small steps when you are sort of coming into this.
And from the appearance of the information that's presented, it appears like it's foolproof, right? But that's only if the system that we're dealing with is a du jour system. The system that we're dealing with have been corrupt people, have been, like we use the example that these people came here and they kill wildlife and stuff like that, dam rivers, do all types of madness. So don't think that because we got some paper with a seal on it, that means that they're just gonna, oh yeah, you can say that you're whatever, and then that's it. It's not gonna work like that. In instances, it has worked like that, but that's not majority of the time. That's more or less than more, which is why it's impressed on Moors that they do some level of studying this information. Don't just leave it up to what was said or what was heard or whatever, but actually you taking the information, you digesting the information for yourself, because it's going to resonate differently with you reading it than somebody putting it in your ear, or you receiving this from some oral perspective and thinking, oh wow, that sounds good, or somebody had a testimonial of what happened in their case, and oh, I'm just gonna do that, and then I'm gonna get off of my stuff. It's not gonna work like that. It's definitely not gonna work like that. Right?
So the whole thing with the check, recheck, analyzing. Right?
Always. Constant fact checking of the information, so that once the information gets in you, it causes a shift in what's going on outside of you. Guaranteed. You can speak with different Moors about that mystical aspect of this. There's even from the level of Moors with and mothers who when they got their fez for the first time and put their turban on for the first time, went outside, and it's a whole different world opens up to you. Like your life is not going to be the same once you start receiving this information from the perspective of you wanting to learn, not receiving it because I got a ticket or I got some taxes or baby mom is trying to get me for 500 and how do I get out of this or whatever like that. If you deal with this from the learning part of it, it's going to have an effect on your life that is going to change your paradigm. It's going to change the way that you've been looking at things. Guaranteed that's going to happen. But that's only on the individual and how they deal with the information. It's like what we say, you get out what you put in. A majority of people want to get out without putting in, which is why you have the people who this doesn't work and I don't know about that and this has nothing to do with whatever and I don't want to be part of a group and well, why do I have to say I'm Islamic and why do we say Allah? All these things are triggers of people who aren't really, this isn't really for them. Because we already know that this is not for everybody. We know that everybody's not going to hear this message and be like, oh, and start running. There's a few people that are going to hear this message and it's going to ring in their ears. And then they're not going to forget that more stuff. And then more stuff just be popping up. Put on TV, something more. Go outside, something more. Sevens everywhere. You know what I mean? There's going to be things that's going to be letting you know you're in the right place or whatever. Ancestors are going to be stepping in. You know, the whole thing of numerology and once you start getting into this information, you're starting to see double numbers and triple numbers and quadruple numbers and you don't know what's going on. You start waking up same time every morning or whatever. There's going to be this repetition of numerical messages that are being sent from somewhere strictly to you. So you can know that, okay, you know what, you need to put some time into this thing because this is actually pretty serious.
It was like one time I was at the customer's house, she and I were talking and just conversing and whatnot, and all of a sudden we're talking about spirituality, and she's telling me her husband's started getting into the spiritual stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's what we are, Moors and stuff, she got the red shirt to start on it, so she knows it, she wants to question it, but she doesn't really know, she doesn't want to go there, She and I talking, and I just finished up doing what I had to do, and all of a sudden her radio turns on, she has a Bluetooth speaker in like the lower end of her house. It turns on like loud too, talking about like, we should be all loving and kind and it was like some speaker just talking. She's like, what is that? She starts freaking out. What is that? She's like, I've never had this like literally for 30 years and this has never happened. So I'm just thinking about it as this point, I'm like, we Moors, we teach, so we tell self-taught, there's no strange happenings, Like, as I'm telling her that, she's like, oh my God, this is going to be the freakiest thing ever. And I tell my husband, And it's like, this is like what you're saying, right? Like, it's not weird, things, it's just the frequency that you're on, It's just an energy, it's just a vibration,
Once we're not coming into this to try to get something, you're gonna fall in this rabbit hole and it's gonna lead you somewhere. It's never gonna be a dead end. You talk with Moors in here, they haven't reached a dead end yet in the rabbit hole. Then you fall down the hole, it leads you somewhere else. You go studying, you end up, sun coming up and you even get sleep yet. You know what I mean? Just because you just started researching a word. What does a word mean? One word led you into 5 hours of studying or whatever. Imagine you start looking up all the words, Any other testimonials or questions? Feel free to throw those up. You got any?
I just wanted to go back to the whole thing with the courts that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Before. To me, this whole thing that they brought up, talking about vexatious litigants, and they're using that now to just take away people's due process, like what it is. right? You can't just say, well, you came to court and we don't agree with your arguments and, you know, we don't think you're coming here for the right reasons and so on and so forth. That's just a direct violation. That's what it is.
Well, I want to add to that, in Cujo, you were talking about, I don't know how much you mentioned, but this may have to do with those other Moors.
Yeah. There's a couple people here are from, you know, got played or whatever.
Right.
So if you have any stuff on that, please feel free to share.
That is where this is at, that what we're standing on is absolutely de jure, but there's a sect of us right now that have decided to be not living in a spiritual righteousness, and they're the ones who are taking this thing that is supposed to be our savior and sort of perverting it, and that's what's happened. So what's happened is the so-called de facto really doesn't have a right to say anything to them. They do have a right in the perspective that those other Moors, whoever you guys have been who have been had those issues, they are outside of sort of their rights to do what they're doing. So ultimately, those are two criminals yelling at each other. So that's what we're really suffering. And Cujo and I have talked about that, and we've talked about this in terms of other things that we've tried to initiate, our right to travel stuff and stuff like that. Until we can get those kind of situations dealt with, we're going to be very hesitant to move forward because there's a horde of people waiting just outside here to take this and to monetize it and to corrupt it. And so we're sort of not going to go into those realms right now because ultimately there are a bunch of people here right now. I mean, this is where our muftis will be rolling on those people and cutting heads off and stuff like that. Right? So that's part of this. That's really who that's directed towards. But unfortunately, we've now sort of fallen under that. But ultimately, like Cujo's saying, if we're walking right and we're understanding that this isn't about trying to get something over on it, it's over. It's already over.
Yeah.
It really already is. We just have to get our house in order. That's it.
And then and a part of us, the body getting their house in order is all the individuals having their house in order.
Absolutely.
So that there's no wiggle room for them to try any stuff because you already know it's like, you know, how is it that these individuals that are doing corrupt activity with this haven't gotten, you know, lightning bolt yet or whatever. With the madness that they've been doing for as long as they've been doing it, they should have got some lightning bolts by now. But again, right? Like, you know, we're not even, you know what I mean, thinking that it's not gonna happen. It just didn't happen yet. You know what I mean? You know, we know their shares coming.
Like you said, the road, right?
Yeah. It's just slack. You know what I mean? Because
It's a matter of time.
yeah, you know. And again, it's not like we're talking about. It's not a thing of
Well, hold on, I just wanted to
yeah. Go ahead, Moore.
just like you said, right? Remember just how we know that there's all connectivity, right? Holy instructions from the prophet, religion, 35. Statement 25. Oh, think not, bold man, because thy punishment is delayed, as the arm of the law is weakened. Neither flatter thyself with the hopes that he winketh at thy doings. His eye perceiveth the secrets of every heart, and he remembereth them forever. He respecteth not the persons with distinctions. The high and the low, the rich and the poor, the wise and ignorant, and the soul hath shaken off the cumbrous shackles of this mortal life, shall equality receive from the sentence of just and everlasting retribution according to their works. So we have to remember that there's a higher justice here. And those people that have done wrong will get what is coming to them for their works. That's what karma always about. And really, we have to see these things that happen to us. And I see these things every time something wrong happens to me, or I perceive it's wrong, it's really just a lesson.
Right.
And we should be thankful for those things. And be thankful that I only lost my fingernail,
Yeah.
not my hand.
Got them in my hand or my arm.
And remember, some fiat that they lost, remember, it was nothing. That was some energy. And now, you know, I remember a European, someone told me this. You know, if he ripped you off for 1,000, be thankful he didn't take you for 10.
So we always have to remember those things too, and I always remember that, so.
So, any other comments, questions?
Yeah, just keep the hearts pure, you know? The body's pure with water.
Pure with water.
The mind's pure, you know?
Facts.
That's how it is, you know? Boil your water too, not just drinking hot water.
Leave that tap water alone.
So you said there's people here that had mishaps or something like that?
Yeah. They bumped into the Moorish lawyers and then people. And
Does anyone want to share a story?
So how you really know a Morse person?
You're one.
Look at the there.
Yes. Oh, you mean like the people who are doing bad with this, you mean?
Right.
Well, majority of it is people being open to energies that those individuals come with. So, for example, somebody that's true and sincere they're not gonna be flashy dashy with this. They're not gonna have fur coats and Benzes and stuff like that saying they're Moors. Like that's not gonna be, you know what I mean? Because that's not what this is about. You know what I mean? It's way bigger than have a nice car and have a house and have a, you know what I mean? It's really about your spirit getting right.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And everybody has those lessons that they, you know, from this you know how to pick up on people's funny energies. You know, we just get blindsided because we see a fez or a turban and we think, oh, they must be righteous or whatever like that. When, you know, preacher called her, they're touching little boys or whatever. You know what I mean?
They're hiding behind these things.
They use these things to hide behind, to do their devilishment. You know, and you know, unfortunately, you know, it's because of people's lack of information why that could even continue on. You know, like we talked, you know, the fact that those individuals are out there using this for that, right? Takes away from our work that we've been doing. You know, we look at, you know, like we got the spreadsheet of all these people that these guys played around, got finance from, right? 3/4 of the finance that these people gave up, they can keep to themselves. If it was up to us, you know what I mean? Like we said, $25 dues we asked for, compared to $5,000 for 2 papers that they say people give, and then they give the $5,000, then they still don't get anything after that. People be here, they pay their 25 dues, and they leave here like the amount of stuff that they leave here with, you know. But again, that's the law of balance. You know what I mean? You have to give up something in order to get. Yeah, that's all right.
I'm just going to say, one of the main ways I would say now, if you're in here, is if they're asking for any what I would call, like you said, if they're asking for any finance over the finance it takes to produce the paperwork, then something's up. So if they're talking to you about, you need to give me $200 for this, $500 for that, that would already, right off the top, be an indication that these people aren't getting it. So that would be the best way to look at that. Plus, what I would say is any information that you're given, there should be a want on their side to have you always say, go check it. Don't believe what we say,
Right.
but do your research.
Yeah.
So those are the things. If anyone's asking you to say, hey, you want to get off of this, give me $1,000, right there you would say, whatever, right? There's an issue.
Right. So for example, with Brother Rennie was one of the people
who, when they were novices in playing people, they started out at $100 or whatever.
They got people 120. I don't know what he did with $20.
Right? And then that was what? That was what, 2012, 2013 or something?
We got a few brothers in the age, actually.
Yeah.
What'd you find?
What's that?
Right.
No, we actually brought Brother Cujo and Canaanland Moors down to Hamilton, and then that's how we met the brothers, right? And from there, just that's when we first seen the cards, and like, oh, this is amazing, and, but like the persuasion on their side was like careful, you can tell, like when Cujo came to present, it was more like a lecture. When they came to present, it was more like
Business.
Business meeting, consultation.
Yeah,
Or whatever.
Yeah, so it was one thing led to another. We were still on freshman information, still freshman, and then we became with more experience, and then levels went up a bit and started seeing things, And now this is 2019. Now this is still going on, right?
Still.
And that was what?
On a higher level too.
That was what, 2017. 2016 or something. That's like 2016. What? The whole thing with
Probably before that.
I think it's going back from further.
Yeah, probably before that.
15.
Yeah, I think it was.
Because I was from over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been going on for quite some time. Wow.
So I think it's what ads in the papers, word of mouth.
No, what they were doing is they would go to the tribunals and they was hanging, and it's like the vultures. They're going inside there and sort of preying on people that were in
Dire need of
stuff.
assistance.
Or for us in Hamilton, it was more of a thing of the temple was here, and.
Are you talking about the first time we came when he was doing the crystals?
Yeah.
Yeah, remember that. Just so that we can expound on that. That was some of the stuff that we learned as an organization, that we're open to everyone of love coming into this because it's yours. We're really Lord's servants. That's really what we're here for, right? We got this building. Here you need stuff. We print this with our printer. We do all this stuff. You need help. We'll talk to you on the phone. I'm not charging you for anything. We brought our brother in. We seemed to be genuine. Right? We knew that there was issues with a lot of this administrative tribunal stuff going on. So we brought the brother in, and we thought that he was genuine and pure. I had my doubts when we walked in with the fur coat and being with it. I had my issues with it. Right? No, I'm telling you honestly. No, I was there. And Cujo over here, Cujo knows, right? I said, there's an issue. The man has a fur coat on, right? That was my first doubt. And then he started talking about passing the hat around. And that was my next thing, right? The whole church thing, right? Passing the hat around. And I said, no, that can't happen. Right? So those are the two indicators we have. Then what happened was because as you see the numbers are the way they are, he was then saying, and what we didn't realize is because remember, we were pure. We were coming from a pure place. He said, I'll help take the position over of trying to help people that are in need of these things. So what happened was, what he was doing behind the scenes, I guess, is he understood and saw that there was a real desperation. So what happened was, behind the scenes, he started to charge for stuff. Now, part of our thing was, let's say for paper or ink, we are entitled to charge for those things. Paper would be 2 cents, ink would be whatever, right? That's what the prophet has mandated, that we can be compensated for the paper and the ink. But what happened was he started to take liberties with that. So then we started to get down the line, we started to get 1, 2, we had a man come in and start saying that he got charged $100. We said, $100 for what? And that's where it started. And then from that point, then we had a trial. Cujo can direct you to that link. We had a trial. It says that you're supposed to give every Moor their chance. He never showed up for the thing, or actually showed up at the end of it. He showed up at the end of it, and that's what they call in the courts ex parte. You call your name, you're not there. And that, by acquiescence, you
Defaulted.
You never challenged that or appealed that.
Well, the second part of it, that we don't have an appeal like that because you're supposed to be honorable, be there on time. We're not them.
Yeah.
Where you're gonna get an appeal. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like
actually, but-
we're taking your hand the first time.
But
Like,
let's even expound that. Remember,
Right.
he tried to appeal to.
Yeah.
Remember, he tried to appeal to another more outside of the jurisdiction. So even that Moor was there on Skype, waiting for this whole thing to happen. So we had Rennie and other Moors from H Town there, and they put up their what would you call it? They put up their it's not their statement, but their issue. And then it was for him to challenge that. He wasn't there. So obviously their claim stands.
Get away with the fur coat.
And then as we know, it multiplied from that.
Right.
It has gotten out of control. I mean, that's where we say really that there should be a head with a fez rolling down the street right now. And it is a right in a metaphorical or
maybe metaphorical.
So everyone said,
Allegedly metaphor.
so everyone is in charge of 100 or the only one that want to charge enough. A lot more than that, trust me.
Don't trust him. He knows.
No, but the point that he was trying to say was the paperwork, the fiat was cost more than the paperwork itself. People use themselves. We do it.
That's also, for example, if they,
Because if you're waiting outside those tribunal places.
oh, you're gonna pay. Like just think about,
No, I know.
you know what I mean?
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so a phone call, a text, and
Yeah.
word of mouth, but nah, like, of course. Of course. We're a customer.
Yeah, lots of customers for days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that spot of
Yeah.
desperation, I said, I'm about to go where? Nah, I got this to declare.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the same like ex-copper and.
yeah.
That's
what the most thing.
All right, so this is part of what they know as far as what these lessons are for. Brother Omar was talking about. Dear readers, do not falsely use these lessons. They are for good, peace, and happiness for all those that love Jesus. Dear mothers, teach these lessons to your little ones that they may learn to love instead of hate. Dear fathers, by these lessons you can set your house in order and your children would learn to love instead of hate. The lessons of this pamphlet are not for sale, but for the sake of humanity. As I am the prophet and the servant is worthy of his hire, you can receive this pamphlet at expense. The reason these lessons have not been known is because the Muslims of India, Egypt, and Palestine had these secrets and kept them back from the outside world. And when the time appointed by Allah, they loosened the keys and freed these secrets. And for the first time in ages, have these secrets been delivered to the hands of the Muslims in America. All authority and rights of publishing of this pamphlet of 1927. So they know that the lessons, not just this pamphlet, but just the lessons generally, are not something that you can sell. Because it's for humanity to get better. And humanity is not going to get better. You're charging them for salvation. Like it doesn't even equate to freedom and liberation or whatever if you're paying. Right?
And the state, to add on to that, the state that they're already in, that state that, the state that we're trying to get better from, you could have made that whole thing with what they're doing, put them in an even worse state than what they're initially.
Right. Yeah.
Causing bigger,
Yeah.
deeper damage, right? Number one, financial. You know what I mean? Like things like that, right?
Yeah. And again too, it's, Drawley said that he needs finance badly. So this isn't for us to go out there and save $5,000 and then pocket. This is to bring this back to here so that this could keep going, but not at the detriment of robbing somebody or taking their last whatever to give them some illusion of freedom through some papers. Freedom's gonna come from the individual knowing who it is that they are.
That's hate.
Exactly.
Yeah, any more questions, comments? Good, good for now. Very good. All right. Yeah, I see you got yours, so you should be all right. So Islam Moors, let's close out. Downstairs. So let's do our closeout, and we'll be here for a couple minutes. And for all the new people here, for new people, just make sure you connect with, the Moors here, get numbers, emails, whatever like that, so you can dialogue. We're just gonna close out with our prayer, face the east. It's coming. Come on, yo. We're here for you. Come on in. Sorry to wake you from your seat, Maximus.
Those chairs down there.
Those chairs are comfy, huh? Father on the left, two on the right. Allah, the Father of the universe. Father of love. Truth. Peace. Freedom. And justice. Allah is my protector. My guide. And my salvation. By night and by day. His holy prophet. Noble Juwadi. Ashir. Islam. Give thanks, Morris.
So, you want to ask you what these things here? Sorry. So, Cujo, quickly, you want to give me a quick one here? So, I think most of these things from shelter.
Yeah.
Majority of us in Germany. In Germany, they're honoring us, right? All of this stuff. Right? This is where you get your drug, like your drug scores. That's where your drug scores. This is right.
Their own.
There was one thing. Oh no, right there. Yeah.
How's your time? You're good for time? You good for time? Or you rush him out of here? All right.
I wanted to finish up and everything.
Yeah.
You came on before, so.
All right.